I gotta start, so.
You want me to?
Yeah, it's okay, I'll get you back when we do.
All right.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Big crowd this morning, huh?
Yeah.
This is the special, well, not special, this is the regular session of the Yuma County Board of Supervisors. We're also sitting as all special taxing districts. I don't know if I feel proud about that. I mention that all the time, but this is December 4th meeting. This is 9 a.m. And this is the call to order. The first thing we have in our agenda is a Pledge of Allegiance, and we'll ask Supervisor Simmons to lead us this morning.
Everybody please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We'll begin this meeting with our first item, which is the call to the public. Call to the public is held for the public's benefit to allow individuals to address issues within the board's jurisdiction. Board members may not discuss items that are not specifically identified on the agenda. Therefore, pursuant to Arizona revised statutes, action taken as a result of public comment will be limited to directing staff to study the matter, responding to criticism, or scheduling the matter for further discussion and decision at a future date. I do have one, but this is for consent calendar item number 10, so I'll put it aside for that. Is there anyone in the public that wants to address the council? Well, it's okay, the board.
Mr. Chairman, members, Board, Kevin Snell, Communications Director for Yuma County. Wanted to give you a brief update. As you all know, just about 2 months ago, you approved to have some equipment upgrades made to our systems with Channel 77, which would make us HD SDI, which is pretty much a HD signal. That equipment has been installed, and if you'll notice, our picture quality has improved greatly. But that's as a result of Spectrum coming down and doing some tuning on the equipment that we have. We are not HD SDI yet. There's some going back and forth, but I'm happy to announce that last Wednesday they agreed that they will be laying the fiber and giving us the equipment. When that's going to happen by, I'm not sure. They have to do some mapping and things like that of the fiber structure and split the fiber out. That's all stuff way above my pay grade, but I am told that that can be anywhere from 100 to 120 days. I should hear from them very soon as to kind of a target date when we will be HD. So that's good news. And also, as you know from the last meeting, we are now streaming live on Facebook every meeting. So you can say hello to the world through Facebook. And that's it. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Kevin.
Anyone else? No? All right, then we'll move on to presentations, proclamations, and appointments. During this segment, members of the board may discuss the presentations and proclamations and may announce appointments to the Yuma County Planning and Zoning Commission and the Yuma County Board of Adjustments. We will take no legal action. Any members of the board with any appointments? If there are none, I will move on to item number 1, which is the presentation of the county line by Yuma 77, the Yuma County Government Channel.
Two county officials will be leading all Arizona counties. One county charity will be receiving a donation thanks to the Arizona Association of Counties. And we're trying to keep up with you. That's why we're going live on Facebook. These stories and more, this is your County Line. We often talk about the responsibilities your county elected officials shoulder, handling the everyday while representing you. It goes far beyond the walls of their offices and even the boundaries of the county itself. Oftentimes, it requires them to work with all 15 Arizona counties to gain consensus in order to move legislation. One organization that helps keep county elected officials working together is the Arizona Association of Counties, or ACO. During their recent annual conference, Yuma County's Recorder Robin Stallworth-Paquette was sworn in as the first Vice President of ACO.
I'm excited to be an executive officer with the ACO team because the ACO team is a member-led organization that really tackles difficult issues in the legislature and also takes a lot of time to share innovation and new ideas throughout the counties, all 15 of them, to save taxpayer money, to tackle things like functionality in one office and uniformity in another.
The Arizona County Supervisors Association is an organization working with all county supervisors in the state. They also made the important announcement that Yuma County Supervisor Russell McLeod was sworn in as their first Vice President. So in the year 2019, Yuma County will have elected officials presiding over 2 statewide associations representing all Arizona counties. We know this leadership duo will not only help keep Yuma County's interests at the table, but also help keep those important relationships for the common good of all Arizona counties and their constituencies. As we reported to you last County Line, many county elected officials and department heads attended the annual Arizona Association of Counties conference. It was a productive 3 days as they attended learning labs, held office-specific meetings, and networked. This conference netted an unsuspected award for a local charity as well. The resort in Chandler, Arizona is making a donation, and the sum of a 50-50 raffle will all go to a charity of choice from ACO. Voting among all attendees was conducted, and Yuma County's own Crossroads Mission was chosen as the recipient of the service project for ACO this year.
ACO is a wonderful organization that can help each community, and we were able to win that this year.
A total of 5 nonprofit groups in rural counties across Arizona were submitted for consideration. Congratulations to Crossroads Mission on the award. For almost 18 years, the Yuma County Government Channel has been bringing you all Board of Supervisor and Planning and Zoning meetings live on your local cable channel. When we began, we were merely trying to keep up with your busy lifestyles and give you a way to keep up with what's going on in the county. Since then, we've continued to do our best to stay in touch and the technology you use to stay informed. That's why we began streaming our channel 24 hours a day, 365 days a year to the internet. We also stream to your mobile device. And now we are joining you on Facebook Live.
The county has been doing Facebook for a couple of years now, and it just is a likely progression for us to put the County Board of Supervisors meeting and the Planning and Zoning meetings live. It makes us more accessible to the public whose lifestyles are becoming more and more busy every day.
Technology certainly has made it easier to watch board and planning and zoning meetings, but we always want to do our best to be accessible. So if you have any ideas or suggestions, feel free to contact us at 373-1010 or message us on Facebook. If you did any shopping on Black Friday, there's a good chance you did it online. That's the trend being seen across the nation on a day that we associate with crowds at the mall. The country is now seeing that more people are at home in their pajamas, beating the rush. Your county government offers you deals online as well. You may not know that you can purchase lots of things from your county government through our online auction site. It's loaded with equipment we no longer use, like cars and trucks, laptops and printers. You name it, we have it for sale. Currently, the auction is closed, but mark your calendars as the Yuma County Surplus Auction Site will be conducted March 16th to March 30th. This auction process ensures that the county extracts the most possible value from its resources and helps to keep materials out of landfills. The money collected from the online auctions goes back into our general fund. You can find out more about the Yuma County online auction by visiting yumacountyaz.gov/surplus auction.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth, and this is your Health Watch. The Yuma County Public Health Services District would like to share the following tips to ensure your family stays healthy and safe during this holiday season. Wash your hands often. Keeping your hands clean is one of the most important steps you can take to avoid getting sick and spreading germs to others. Travel safely. Check weather advisories and road conditions. Make sure everyone buckles their seatbelt regardless of the length of the trip. Check the lights. Take a look at the lights on your tree and in around your home for exposed frayed wires, loose connections, or broken sockets. Choose age-appropriate toys. Check to make sure there aren't any small parts or potential choking hazards. Be especially mindful of small button-shaped batteries and magnets. Practice fire safety. Never leave burning candles unattended and make sure they are out of reach of children and pets. Check your smoke detectors and fire extinguishers. Finally, don't forget your pets. Keep holiday lights and ornaments out of reach. For further information, please contact Yuma County Public Health Services District at 928-317-4550. This is all for now. Until next time, stay healthy, Yuma.
As we close, here's some important scheduling information you might need to know. Don't forget the holiday season is coming soon. This means that on Monday, December 25th and Monday, January 1st, the county offices will be closed in observance. We'd like to thank you for joining us for this County Line. If you'd like to watch past episodes, log on to yumacountyaz.gov/VOD. We'll see you next time.
It's almost a Vulcan salute. Never gets there. All right. The next item is the consent calendar items. There are items 1 through 10, and now I'll entertain anyone that wants to open up an item. I know that I have a speaker card here in reference to one of them, so I need item number 10 to be pulled from the agenda so we can discuss it. Is there a motion to approve all
Item number 7 as well.
item number 7 as well? All right. Right. So we have item number 7 and item number 10. Is there a motion to approve the rest of them?
So moved.
Motion to approve items 1 through 10 with the exception of 7 and 10. Is there a second?
Second.
Then a motion and second to approve consent calendars items 1 through 10 with the exception of 7 and 10. All those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Right, that was pretty clear, wasn't it?
Yeah.
All right, then let's move on to item number 7, which is Development Services and Engineering to adopt resolution number 1737, establishing a 25-mile-per-hour limit on 38th Street between Bunny Avenue and Foothills Boulevard. I mean, I would have brought that up anyway. I mean, 25 miles an hour. Okay, well, okay. Who wanted it? Who asked for that? You pulled it? All
I
right.
pulled it.
Chairman Reyes, Supervisor McLeod, Frank Sanchez, Deputy County Engineer.
Why? They drive slow anyway. Most of the people out there.
Well,
need to put it there.
Here's the reason I pulled it is a few years ago, signs went up where there never were signs before posting a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit.
On that same
On
street?
that same stretch, yeah.
I think it's always been posted 35. I don't think that it was 25 and then it went up before.
No, it didn't go up. I don't think it was posted. And then somewhere along the line, it got posted.
I think our understanding is that it's always been 35 from the initial development of
Right.
those adjacent subdivisions. It's been 35.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Right.
I was told that the signs went up a few years ago where there hadn't been any.
Sometimes signs get knocked down and it takes a while before we're alerted that signs are down. So there's some new folks to the area, and then we finally get around to it and post the signs back up.
Okay.
They might get that impression.
Yeah, but it's mostly residential. Why would it ever have been 35?
That was gonna be my question.
Yeah,
It's a residential area.
It does serve as a collector. The residential streets all around it pretty much allow traffic from those residential streets to go to 38th and then down to Foothills Boulevard. So it does serve as a collector with minimum right-of-way, small street. So I think that was the original intent for the street, was to be a collector, which collectors we normally do post 35 miles an hour.
And then what brought this up then to go to 25, you know?
It was a concern from a resident in the area. And then we brought that to the Traffic Control Review Committee, and then the sheriff's representative to the committee also thought that 35 was a bit too high.
Well, I don't agree.
It's because you always want to drive.
Well, my car doesn't even have a 25 mile per hour. So I raced all month. Yeah, if it doesn't have a 35 and up, it doesn't work for me. But anyway,
You, Darren?
I don't know how we determine,
You
the
good?
speed limit.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm glad they're dropping it to 25.
dang
That 35 is way too fast through there.
It's an uphill climb for me then. Okay, so we have determined that, 25 is the right speed limit because this is a residential area. Is that correct?
And Mr. Chairman, I move that we would adopt number 7 as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, been a motion and a second to approve. This is painful, reducing a speed limit from 35 to 25 mile an hour.
I know you don't vote no, I get it.
On adopt resolution number 1737.
2017-37, yeah.
Well, yeah, 2017-37. Any discussion on this, please? No? All those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Nay.
Tony.
All right.
It'll be difficult.
After this difficult decision, we'll move on to the easier ones. The next item in the agenda is for county administration to discuss and provide direction on the proposed questions for the Yuma County 2018 residential survey.
No, you got
number
10.
We still have
Oh,
number
number
10.
10, that's right. I'm sorry, guys. Not enough coffee, not enough coffee. In the shock of reducing the speed limit there, it just threw me off.
December is going to be an interesting month.
Yeah, that threw me off right away. I forgot everything else after that. Item number 10, it's the public works item, is to award the solid waste disposal services West County bid. There's a lot of numbers in there. To South Yuma County landfill for calendar years 2018 through 2022 at a cost of $25 per ton, and to authorize the public works director to execute all agreements and financial documents as needed to expedite the contracting process, contingent upon review by legal counsel. Go ahead, sorry.
Good morning, Councilman Reyes, members of the board. My name is Peter Sternberg, and I'm with Republic Services, and we've placed a bid for this item as well to take the waste to our transfer station that's located at 3.5E and 32nd Street. And I would like to point out the bid schedule that was part of your packet, and it looks at the pricing difference, and we are $5.60 higher than CR&R for their price for the South Yuma County landfill. We're about 10 miles closer to the facility where you're taking the trash, so there is some time savings there. But in particular, I'd like you to look at the bottom of that, the bid sheet, and it does note the county reserves the right to make multiple awards for this solicitation. And I would ask you to make multiple awards for this solicitation, and the reasons are pretty simple. Transportation cost per ton is going to be based on how heavy the load is. And so as you have lighter loads, you may actually find it cheaper to take the waste directly to our transfer station versus going out to the landfill. There's other costs as well that you want to consider. Certainly going into a landfill is going to have more impact on the tires for your vehicles. We have a fairly uniformed asphalt or concrete and stone lot that you'll be dumping in. It's very level. When you get into a landfill, you're put on the risk of flat tires. You have the risk of being on an uneven surface while dumping. So there's other considerations to think about. But in particular, time consideration is probably the biggest one. So if you have a truck down, you're running behind, you might find it much more economical and feasible to use our transfer station. In addition, South Yuma County does take a lot of special waste loads from California, liquids and contaminated soils. And when those projects are generally event-driven. And so if they have an event where they have a large volume coming in, there can be a long line to dump, and the turn time in and out of the landfill will go up. We conservatively estimate it's probably 30 minutes additional time. So when you look at your transportation cost per ton, there's going to be probably opportunities where you're going to say, hey, it's probably cheaper to take it to the transfer station. So all I ask is when you look at this award, you do have the right to make multiple awards, and I would ask that you award the contract as well to Republic Services and use us to your advantage when it saves you money. And any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Well, no, we'd like to ask some questions of our staff, though. At least I'd like to ask some questions of our staff.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Josh Scott, Public Works Director.
The recommendation is to issue the bid to the South Yuma County landfill. You know, that's the recommendation we have in front of us. I did read a little bit about your evaluation and some of the statements afterwards. Is that still your recommendation?
It is. At this point, the bid criteria as it went out was, you know, one of the things we would consider were the hours of operation of the receiving facility. We verified during our evaluation process that Republic Services transfer site is only open one Saturday a month. I think most everybody knows that's a really busy day for us in solid waste, and we typically run 2 trucks on Saturdays. That was one of the considerations. Another was the actual cost per load. I think, you know, we've had some discussion, Republic Services and I, over the last few days. And if you look at the cost per load, they made an assumption based on our numbers in East County, where we don't have the equipment to be able to compact the bins. So when you move to West County, where we do have that equipment, the actual number of tons we can cram into a bin goes up, so it makes it a little more cost effective going to South County landfill, where the per ton disposal costs are cheaper.
How many sites do we have, you know, transfer sites?
We have, well, for the West County portion, it would just be the South Gila, or South Gila transfer site. East County, we've got Welton, Dateland, Tacna, and then our mobile transfer sites as well. And
so we're only dealing with the south side.
Correct, yeah, the West County.
West County. Go ahead, Supervisor.
Josh, do you see an advantage to awarding both? I mean, if we award both, you don't have to use Republic if it's not to your advantage. I mean, would you like us to approve both, or do you just see that you would not ever take advantage of the closer landfill?
No, I can see us taking advantage of the transfer site if that were awarded as well. I don't know how frequently, but as this gentleman just stated, you know, there are times when the lines get long out at South County. There are times, you know, particularly weather events where they might close or hold off down in South County as well. Depending on the day of the week and the situation, I can see us using their facility, but how often, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't really care about that. I'm not saying, I wouldn't say you need to use it once a month or once a week or anything like that, but if you had that option available to you, I think it's probably advantageous. You have somebody on site that can make those determinations, I'm sure, correct?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
I would see that giving you flexibility is better than tying your hands.
Mm-hmm.
The only problem I see is the way that you went out to bid on a price basis. I know that, you know, that it is stated here that the, you know, we reserve the right to make multiple awards. But I mean, I would like to see a little more detail on what sort of criteria would be used. Otherwise, we get into a situation where, you know, we don't know who determines where, you know, this thing is sent, and then we get into issues, legal issues. You know, the South Yuma County landfill, you know, may just simply say, well, you know, so-and-so likes, you know, Republic or whatever. You know, and those are the kind of issues we normally tend not to like to get into. So how would, you know, in other words, without a set criteria about when and how, and, you know, for example, if they're closed on Saturday, or, you know, if there's some sort of criteria of when this decision gets made or how it gets made about where to send this trash, it'd be a lot easier for me to make that decision. Right now, you know, I don't know. I mean, legal's here, and I guess, you know, a question can be asked from them. I mean, we did state there that we could make multiple selections, so I guess legally we could, but is there some sort of limitation to the fact that we asked for a price per ton? And this is obviously not the lowest price per ton.
I don't actually have the document that went out. I do see some language that was included in the documents for today. You know, the issues to keep in mind is when you contract with the sole source at $25 a ton, and if they're not available to fulfill the contract and you have to go to another source, technically that source that you contracted with is responsible for the difference in what you're paying extra to get the job done. That's the advantage to having the sole source. Having a backup just in case you need it, if there's an emergency, I suppose that's another idea. Multiple awards could be the idea behind that, or the intent may have been that there was two responses that appear to be almost identical. Why not split them up? There's a lot of factors involved. I don't know if the original, the lowest bidder put that quote in because he thought he or she would have exclusive rights to the.
And well, you see, what I don't want to get into is, you know, all of a sudden we do this multiple awards, and then you defeat the purpose of going after the lowest bid.
That's right.
Because, you know, now, you know, you're picking whichever you like kind of sort of situation. Because really, when you talk about unknowns such as, you know, fuel costs and those type of things, I mean, you're touching upon an unknown. And so it's very difficult to make, for us, without the technical knowledge, it's very difficult to make a decision that's really well informed. I mean, that's why we ask you, okay, which is the one you prefer? And how did you get to that kind of recommendation? Now, if this was a situation where they were both the same amount, I mean, they were both $25 a ton, it would be easy. I would say, look, fine, we will name, you know, South Yuma County as the primary, and we will name, what's the name? Republic, the alternate, and that way you could choose one or the other whenever. But there's a $5 a ton difference, and it seems to me like there's almost no way to determine when that will be economically better for us.
How many tons does the bin hold? Typically,
we get about right around 6.5 tons per bin in West County.
Okay,
it's more about 3.5 out in East County because we can't compact out there.
right.
Mr. Chairman, I share your concern as well about who makes the call on which facility to use. So if we had multiple awards here, we would have to put something in place within Public Works that said which facility you use and when, under what conditions, you know. When would we go to Republic, even though it's a higher price per ton? There's obviously situations where we would take advantage of that, but I wouldn't want to leave it up to somebody's.
Well, that's what I mean. Is there a particular difficulty and you know, when do you need to have this contract ready? Maybe you can negotiate a similar price or something that's set that allows us to deal with it in a way that has the mechanisms in there to protect us from, you know, the bidder, the lowest bidder coming over and saying, wait a minute, you know, I gave you guys the lowest bid. Now you're using you're using different criteria to make the decision that isn't in the bid document. So is there John?
I just want to remind that this was a bidding process that took place. It's closed. Any responses those are the responses. To go back and try and renegotiate a price, you'd have to reopen it all back up.
All right, well, the recommendation is to award it to South Yuma County Landfill. If we get into multiple bids and those type of things, I think that we're leaving ourselves open to the opposite side of this, which is the lowest bidder saying, hey, wait a minute, you know, I did what I was supposed to do, and now, you know, now you guys are making a different decision, not what they actually expected. I mean, there's a reason why we asked for the lowest bids.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Supervisor Porches.
I mean, even going with the recommendation from staff, could we have an alternate? I mean, in case of emergencies, what would you do if it's closed or it happened? Where would we take it?
In other words, I guess what you're saying is you don't want to make this an exclusive contract. You want to make it a contract that has a particular emergency or like an alternate clause?
Yeah.
Legal can answer that probably more than I can.
I think if Mr. Chairman, if I understood Mr. Smith correctly, in an instance where South Yuma County landfill couldn't take our waste and we had to find an alternate, as long as it was within the terms of the contract, I think we could go back to South Yuma County landfill and they would have to make up the difference in whatever the price is that we had to pay to dispose of that waste in that situation. Because, you know, they will be under contract and they will be required to accept our waste and at the hours and at the facility that they noted in their bid.
All right, guys. I mean, and ladies and gentlemen of the board, I mean, you've heard it. Are there any other questions?
I guess I have a
John?
question still.
I have questions still.
Okay, what's the question?
Can't we have rules put in place that would, if Yuma, South County, yeah, if they couldn't make it, that Republic would be used? Can we do that? I mean, just
I
in
thought that was
emergencies?
answered already. What the answer to that was that if South Yuma County landfill cannot fulfill, you know, their obligation to take our garbage, then you can take it to Republic's transfer landfill, and they would have to take it, and then you would be billing South Yuma County the difference. Is that correct?
That's my understanding.
That's what my understanding of that issue is.
It wouldn't be exclusive of any vendor overflow unless you do that right now.
Yeah.
I could see where you're going with your advantage of having an emergency set us backup. Again, I don't know if that would cause you to waive your right to some type of damage associated with South Yuma County landfill have not been able to fulfill their initial responsibilities under the contract, but certainly it makes it nice if there's an emergency situation without having a declaration of an emergency by the board to have a certain contract or service provided, to have that taken care of ahead of time. I know Tony Badia from Emergency Management would agree with that.
Yeah.
But you know, if you give exclusive right to the lowest bidder and that organization or company is unable to fulfill those duties and they need to get fulfilled, it's nice to have a backup. And that's,
So, excuse me, so,
Sure.
Mr. Chair.
I don't know when that would occur, if it ever occurs, or if there would be
Yeah.
a situation where you're in such a mess that one of the providers goes, whatever reason, is unable to fulfill the duties either on a short-term or long-term basis. You know, do you want to have a backup set up, and then that determination will be made by your director of, or whomever you choose.
I think if
Can't we put it into some sort of rule that at
Well-
Public Works to be able to have one specific done instead of whoever happens, you know what I'm saying? Aren't there others besides Republic and Yuma Southwest?
No, not here.
Disposal places?
There's only two.
No, those are the only two.
Oh,
No,
See, if I
Okay.
understand that correctly, if I understand this correctly, if we issue, if our decision is to go ahead and approve our contract with the South County landfill, and theirs is a $25 a ton, you know, cost per ton, and they have specific hours, they have to give us those services in those specific hours. If they can't provide that, then, you know, the Public Works Department can go to the other one. I mean, if there was two or three, it could go to any of the two or three and deliver that garbage or that, you know, refuse, that trash, and then go back to South Yuma County and say, look, you weren't able to take this, so we have to take it there, and it cost us $5 more, so you have to refund us for the amount of money. If we go ahead and right now establish a primary landfill and a secondary landfill, then we're not going to be able to go back and charge anyone because we have established that the second one, the cost of the second one, and that means that we will pay the difference. That's
okay.
what I'm trying to say, right? Is that correct?
that's my concern. I don't know if that's exactly going to be the result, but
Yeah, in
I
other
mean,
words,
the advantage is you have your backup set up and it's ready to move if they need it. I don't know if that would, I'd have to do some more research if that would count as a waiver of your ability to get
I
your
think
benefit
that
of the bargain.
at this particular time, the simple decision to me would be that we acknowledge that if we chose Republic as our second provider, we also acknowledge that it's going to cost us $5 more when you use it. And that the Public Works Department be given directions to set up the criteria under which you would, use this secondary site. Okay, and acknowledge the fact that we chose the primary because it was the cheapest one. And we allow the secondary because it may be more convenient and even cheaper sometimes to go ahead and deliver it to the second site. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. That's
And
correct.
you would then, if we go ahead and make this motion, you would be given direction to set that criteria so that everybody at the Public Works Department would follow that and not simply say, well, today is Wednesday, I'm gonna take it over to the other one. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes. We
Is
would
that
set up
doable?
criteria.
I think so.
All right, good.
And we'll do
And
final
that would be
review and assist them
multiple.
in doing that.
Excuse me?
I was just a couple questions.
I thought that was just covered everything.
I think you did cover everything. And Josh, I would assume then that whoever is in charge, the supervisor, then would sign off, right? We would know who made that decision. They would have to sign off on.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what that looks like at this point, but there would definitely need to be an accountability piece. So
Right.
the lead worker there in solid waste would ultimately be the one making that call and putting his name.
When the lines get long in South County, how long is the wait? Just in rough terms.
You know, some of my ride-alongs, it might be 20 minutes to get up the hill and
Okay.
get backed in.
Because we're looking at about, almost $40.
So that covers you out, Joe. I think we just set up an alternate, as
Which,
long as we realize.
That's fairly substantial. But I suppose there are times, as the chairman said.
All right.
I like the way you set it up.
All right, what we're gonna do is, and next time when we go out to bid, we'll delineate that so that essentially, there's no concern about whether we followed what we set out to bid. We will say we'll have a primary and a secondary and whatever, and we'll set it up in that way. Right now, I think that what we wanna do is make sure that you have all the options available to you in terms of, getting rid of the trash. By allowing you to have a primary and a secondary. Although we know that the secondary price will be higher, there will be a criteria set up and, to make that decision as to take away the objectivity or subjectivity, whatever it's called, of making that decision. And, we're gonna watch that system to see if it works. Now, this is a 4-year contract. I think it goes from 2018 to, 5 to 2022 or something like that. So we'll be watching it, and this way, in some ways, I think we'll be making sure that both landfills, will get, business from us depending on our needs. Is that correct? Now, could that be made into a motion?
I'll second that.
I'll make that motion. I'll make that. Did everybody understand? Or do I have to do it, verbally there?
I would request you do it verbally.
All right, well,
so
there's a motion.
the
The motion,
clerk can get it down.
the motion is to award the bid to the lowest bidder and set up an alternate, which will be the second highest, lowest bidder, to have, and to instruct, that would be the first part of the motion. The second part of the motion will be to instruct Public Works to create a written instruction how to use the alternate when needed.
Mr. Chairman, I'd recommend that you look at the recommended motion and go off of that with any secondary or supplements you want to put on it. It does give some authorization.
The motion says to award the solid waste disposal to West County bid to South Yuma County for calendar year 2018 to 2022 at a cost of $25 per ton. Then, I would then go ahead and say, and to create an alternate source, see, this is my problem. I don't want to say into award again, because I think that, is that the kind of wording you're gonna need? And to award the second bidder, what?
I think you can use that word, and to award is,
And to award the second bidder the alternate? An alternate? See that?
I can do this.
All right, give it a shot.
I make a move that we award the solid waste disposal services West County bid number, long number, to South Yuma County Landfill Incorporated for calendar years 2018 through 22 at a cost of $25 per ton, and allow the second bidder for Public Services at $30.50, I think it was, per ton as an alternate. And Public Works is to create a criteria to be used to determine when the alternate may be used, and also authorize the Public Works Director to execute all agreements and financial documents as needed to expedite the contracting process, contingent upon review by legal counsel.
Mr. Chairman, Republic's bid was $30.60 a ton.
Revise my motion to 3060.
See, this presents a problem for me simply because we just finished awarding a bid to Copper Mountain, without doing that. So now what we created, what we're going to create with this is, we already awarded one with a simple that had no alternative, which means now in that particular case, South Yuma County does not have the same rights as we're doing right now. That presents a problem for me. I didn't think about that until I looked at my agenda again and realized, okay, we did one that was not, there's no is there a representative here from South Yuma County landfill? Of course not. And that's because they assumed they were going to get the bid, right? It's on a consent item. That's a law.
The difference there is it does not make any financial sense at all to ever drive that far with a 3-ton load.
I know.
I mean, that's the difference. There is.
Okay, well, this should be also a lesson to everybody who thinks consent means it's all done with.
Yeah.
Okay, that would be South Yuma County's the message to South Yuma County. You better be there if you have something that's to be awarded. But anyway, we worked on this for some time. I think that the motion is even better than I could come up with. So there's a motion and a second to do just what Supervisor McLeod mentioned. Can you read
We
it?
need a second still, I think.
Second.
There's a second from Supervisor Porches. Can you read that motion back for the record?
Okay.
I don't think that came on.
Okay, so it's basically award is presented and award a second bidder as alternate. And Public Works is to create a criteria to use for when the alternate may be used at $30.60 price per ton. And also authorize the Public Works Director to execute all agreements and financial documents as needed to expedite the contracting process contingent upon review by legal counsel.
All right. Is that clear enough?
Good job.
Okay, all those in favor signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. I'm sorry to keep you guys on that, but that's what it takes sometimes.
First of the short
This
agenda.
is like making sausage right here. All right. The next item is discussion and action item. The board will open each of the following items separately for discussion and action as appropriate. And the first one is the county administrations discuss and provide directions on the proposed questions for the Yuma County 2018 resident survey.
Yes, I'd ask Paul to come up
Paul
and
Melcher?
get any of your feedback on the proposed draft questions. These are revised based on your comments from our September work session where we talked about the initial questions for the resident survey and took into account the desire of the board not to make sure that none of the questions were either leading questions or set up any kind of expectation that we might not be able to meet. And to make sure that they're just valuable feedback for us in our operations in order to improve our operations and to make sure that we're meeting the needs of our residents. So we'll ask for your feedback on these revised questions at this point.
Where are they?
Within your
In the
packet,
packet?
yes.
All right.
Mr. Chairman.
I thought you were gonna put up a dreaded, board thing.
Mr. Chairman, I heard the message loud and clear that I didn't think that another PowerPoint presentation would be necessary, but I would be happy to go through with the board from each survey sets of questions or just do the management by exception technique that if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them at this time. I would note, Mr. Chairman, that one of the other items that we've amended in terms of the survey questions was that we provided a comment box at the end just to capture any other comments that might come up during the process of taking the surveys.
Okay.
If I may?
Sure. Yeah.
I was not at that meeting where the board discussed this, and
Go ahead.
I don't know what we get out of this. And what I see is we set up the possibility, depending on who's surveyed, to actually stub our toe. For instance, how would you rate Yuma County as a place to live? What if you've got 20% of the people rating it below average or poor? How does that benefit us? And the public perception would be, if that gets put in the media, and all of a sudden you see people, they're winter visitors here. It's like, oh, well, I thought this was kind of a good place to live, but people who live here don't think so. I need to rethink whether I'm going to buy a lot here or buy a home here. I was thinking about it, but after I see that survey, because, you know, people have a tendency, if government's putting out something, to poke government in the eye.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't see where we win on this thing. I see one of two possibilities, or primary possibilities. Either we do the survey and we sit around, pat ourselves on the back and say we're doing a good job, or we stub our toe and give the impression to visitors or others looking at our community that maybe it's not such a great place to live after all, because unfortunately we surveyed people who wanted to poke government in the eye. We know it's a great place to live. Yuma County is a fantastic place to live. And you see that because people come here and stay. You see military that have been stationed here when they retire, they come here. It speaks for itself. And I don't know how I just don't know how we would possibly benefit.
Right. Now, I've always railed against surveys, but this time I'm going to rail for survey. Okay, so the reason we do this, and the reason I complained a lot about it was because we did it, in my particular view, sometimes too often. We had too many surveys going on at the time. Not now, not recently, because I think recently we've gotten into this frame of mind where, you know, it was very difficult to see how you could get any benefit. Some of the questions that you have in here, you know, I would like to know what the perception of people are about the county, if we could define what the county does for them. The particular problem I had in the past was that a lot of people were going to be giving us their answers based on where they live. Mm-hmm. And you see, they live in Yuma, they're going to have a different perception than Somerton. And, you know, that people do not understand what county is really. Yeah. So when you do a survey and you're asking them, you know, do you like Yuma County as a place to raise your children? They'll be talking about Yuma if they live in Yuma. Mm-hmm. They'll be talking about San Luis if they live in San Luis, or Somerton if they live in Somerton. So really, what is that, you know, what is that going to do for us? I mean, if they like the roads where they live, you know, it may not be county roads. It may be city roads. So unless we are more specific about what we have control of, you know, doing a broad survey where we ask people, do you like Yuma County as a place to live? You know, people are going to be responding based on where they live. You know, they'll be responding in Tacna, you know, I don't like that. There's nothing here. You know, and they'll be, you know, that, you know, I mean, there's very little to do.
Wait a minute.
I should have
think about
that. If they would be, I can't even pick any other place because they're all in Supervisor Simmons, you know, Lake Martinez. No, but you get my point that, you know, if we're going to do a county survey, I always wanted to make sure that the questions we ask were something we could do something about or with. You know, not asking a general question like, do you like, you know, living in Yuma County, has this particular tendency to say, well, yeah, well, if I don't, what does it mean? I mean, what does it mean to you? I mean, do we really want to, you know, you know, I guess you pick my point, right? I mean, you know, the employment, for example, if you like the state of Arizona, I mean, it may be because you live in Tucson and you like where in Tucson, how you live. You live in Flagstaff, you like different things. You live in Maricopa County, you like different things. So when you ask a question like, do you like to live in the state of Arizona? There's a preconception that is anywhere in the state. Same thing happens in Yuma County. So the responses, unless you could make it clear, you know, unless you can make those questions relate to things we normally have some impact on, they tend to be, just like Supervisor McLeod said, they tend to get us into a situation where we create expectations we can't deliver on. I remember our strategic plan in the past used to include reducing, you know, the unemployment rate by 1%. I used to say, yeah, really? I mean, you know, what do we do that can reduce the unemployment rate by 1 or 5 or 2 or 3% that you can point to us as doing directly? I think now we do a little bit more, you know, forefronted, we do a lot, you know, we get involved a lot more in economic development. But the point of this whole, I guess, rambling is that we do need to have a survey, and I think that you're moving towards a much better document that we used to use in the past. Now what I like to see is, I like to narrow it down even more to the things that we have control over. For example, ease of travel in the county. Now, yeah, I think that if you say ease of travel in the county, people will understand, because I think it isn't just, how do you get to the, necessarily just how do you get from your work to your house inside a certain circle. That may be, employment opportunities, for example, is really broad, but it does refer to the county. Type of housing available. You see, the type of housing available in Yuma is very different than the type of housing available in other places in the county. So how do we define the geographical area we really have influence over? That's the question to me, and it's a question that I probably like to have an answer to before I say, okay, we'll do a survey, especially because surveys are costly sometimes, and they create expectations. It's like, that's why I almost always refuse to do a job survey or a job survey, job description survey, whatever we call it here. Because normally, the staff expects that the survey will indicate that they're low, they're paid less than other counties or other cities. Again, Supervisor McLeod brought the issue of what do we expect to get out of this, and I think that we need to answer that question before we go ahead and approve a survey. What do we expect? What do we want from a survey? Go ahead, Supervisor.
I would say a survey should point out at least what the county government is doing as roads, streetlights, intersections out in the county. And specifically say, if you're asking about roads, and says have something in parentheses, not city, so they can, if they're gonna law enforcement presence in the county.
Sheriff's office.
Sheriffs or sheriff.
Something more specific, like sheriff.
But I think those are the things that.
You got a ticket recently or not?
Well,
that one in San Luis the last week.
But I think that's what we need to know to it will help us identify where the needs are and pay more attention on that, I think.
Look, I do see that you asked the question. You do ask the question of, do you own property in Yuma County? Do you live inside the limits of the city or town? You do ask those questions. It's just that when you bring that survey result back, maybe what you ought to do is take out all those answers from within city limits and deal with the answers of the outside city limits. Or maybe the survey should begin by saying, are you a resident of a city? If you are, then you don't need to answer this.
Then you don't need to answer these questions.
Well, the cities are in Yuma
There
County.
actually, there are things that we do that are only outside city limits, and then there are things that we do as a county that include all city.
Well, then you should be asking specific
So those are
questions like
health district,
the
library
health department,
district.
the
Those
flood
things-
zone, the library.
Those things apply to
Parks.
everybody, so we wouldn't want to exclude city residents from those
Okay,
survey
good.
portions. But yes, if we're asking only about roads out in the county, then we wouldn't want city residents
Then why don't-
answering how.
then why don't we
but
do-
they do travel across the county even if they live in a city. So there's a lot of overlap. We wouldn't want to exclude people based just on that, or that, whether they live inside the
I
city.
would, but then again, no,
I don't know
really,
what we're gonna get out of it.
I think that we need to have this tool be more reflective of the things that we can do, the things that we have some sort of influence over. For example, is the building permit sections, or, is that okay? Do you like that? Do you like the library systems? I mean, what can we do to improve that? If we had a survey that was more specific to what we do, that would probably be better I would receive that with better attitude.
So this survey includes sections for the departments that provide services that have said they want to get survey feedback. We have excluded departments mainly from some of the elected officials who said, really, people can't say whether they think taxes are fair or not. That's really not something that we can do something about.
That's what people
So
think we do
Take
anyway.
that off the table. So we're including specific questions about specific departments that provide services, county services. It sounds like you're having issues or questions or concerns about the general questions at the beginning of the survey that are kind of, how do you feel about Yuma County as a place to live, place to raise children, place to work? How do you feel about the quality of shopping, the types of housing? Are those the things that you think are too general that you don't want to
Outside of
include?
the city limits.
You just want to include, or you want to say
Well, I
specifically
want-
outside the city limits, how do you feel about these services? What,
Well, you see, you
I'm
can't-
trying to get some specifics from you so that we can make some adjustments on the survey questions. Or on the alternative, if you really don't want to even do a survey, then we'll just take it off the table. But we've brought it to you because historically every 2 years the county has done a survey. That's why we're bringing it to you. If the board doesn't want to do surveys, then we just won't even do it. So I'm trying to figure out, do you want to do one? And if not, we'll just drop this. If you do want to do one, then we want to try to meet your needs, is trying to be as specific as possible. So which questions do you want to exclude or change if you do want to do a survey?
Supervisor McLeod?
Yeah, and you're looking at these questions, and I know you tried to, do a good job on this, and we'd all like to know exactly how people feel, but I mean, if somebody said, as a place to live, raise children, let's just say they said it was poor, which we know isn't true, but let's say that was their perception. What are we going to do about it? I mean, all we can do is damage our reputation and no way to do anything about it. Now, if you wanted to put together a survey that said, have you interacted with this department? I mean, part of it, like the second half, I think it's the first half I have problems with.
General.
Because I don't see, we can either pat ourselves on the back or stub our toe and damage our reputation. There's just,
No other outcome, huh?
I don't see that there is, because that people, depending upon their circumstance, somebody who got laid off 2 months ago and hasn't been able to find employment, how do you think they're going to score this? This place is terrible. I can't find a job.
But it would be the truth. That's what you're searching for. I mean, you're not
What
searching
will you do
for.
about it?
Well, that's the point, right? Isn't it?
See, what are you going to do with this
Those
information?
were the circumstances. You don't know that those were the circumstances.
Right.
Yeah.
We don't know what their circumstances are, why they rated
That's
it
right.
poorly.
That's
Well,
right.
okay.
I just think if you.
So I guess you answered. I guess it's an answer to our questions here. The survey needs to be a lot more specific about what the county, but what the county can and cannot, in areas that the county can have some sort of impact. And to me, it would be much more useful if it directly, tied in the department you're asking a question about, like libraries or the sheriff or the court system or something that we do. Not a general sense of well-being in the county, because I think that in some ways that, again, and think about the kind of population we have here. We have a very diverse population. We have winter visitors who may have an idea that's much, much different because they're looking for a much different thing than the regular population. Then we have a lot of Mexican American people who are just migrants who have another perception of what life is, what's good in life. To me, the more specific you make it to the different departments we have some influence on, the better off I feel about conducting a survey. Now we're coming up on 2020, which will be the census. And now the census survey contains a lot of those questions, I think, a lot of questions about, some of these issues. And we'll get an answer to that without doing the 2021. I mean, there's a lot more stuff that goes on in a census survey than most people understand or, really know about.
Mr. Chairman, Susan, you mentioned we do these every couple of years, and this is where I'm getting my perspective from. I've seen these in the past, and some of the comments that people made, and some of the scoring is like, well. So let me ask you, the last one, what did we do with it? How did we apply it?
The last one that was done in-house, and
Those are fine.
we didn't.
I'm talking about resident survey.
No, I mean, the last resident survey we did with in-house staff.
Okay.
The ones prior to that were done with a consulting firm that showed kind of data from 1 year or for 2 years to the next 2 years and compared over time.
But what did we do with
the questions that happened that were done in 2015? I don't think we actually published anything about it. It was, I don't know if Paul has some information.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman and Supervisor McLeod, that in-house survey that we conducted was supposed to have a more fiscal focus. So we actively went out and asked about taxes, about what to do with money in that attempt to look at some kind of strategic plan moving forward in relation to a long-range financial plan.
Did it affect anything we do?
No, there was nothing that was implemented coming out of that survey. And you're right, Kevin came up, and what we've been talking about lately is trying to figure out how we're going to promote the survey. And one of those questions that kept coming back up is, this seems to be one of those pat on your back surveys. You know, general kind of, how are we doing? Is there anything that we can do a little bit better? But it didn't have that specific fiscal focus. What does the board want to get out of it? And I think that's a really good question as you move forward. When you look at it, when you started commenting, I just started taking out this section here, thinking that, yes, if you were looking at it from that standpoint, you could talk about how many years have you lived in the county? Where do you live in the county? What kind of services do you receive? And then guide it that way, because then you're getting a little bit more focus if you're looking at trying to figure out who lives in what geographic area, even going down to zip codes. So I think that is a really good question, is what do you want to get out of this? Because as Susan said, we're trying to just create the consistency from the previous resident surveys. The questions are taken pretty much verbatim from those surveys in order to promote continuity. But if we feel as though we're not getting anything out of those, certainly at this point, we can reinvest our time and effort in looking at asking that question again to the board, and then also with Susan to figure out, as a county administrator, what would you like to see out of that survey and the questions?
Mr. Chairman, I think I can answer some of that, Paul. It's like, we were at a meeting and a gentleman challenged me, well, what do you do for me? Right? People don't have a clue. I think he would, are you aware of? Have you used? How would you rate the service? And we could use the survey as an educational tool to say, these are all the things the county provides that you may or may not be aware of.
Mm-hmm.
I think most people would be very hard pressed to name the dozen services that we do provide. I would probably be hard pressed to sit here and come up with all of them.
You know,
but you know, did you know Yuma County handles animal control? Have you used animal control? How is the service? So we
don't handle animal control. We contract it out.
So,
no, we're good.
So we do try to be as specific as possible. So we give a definition of what, for instance, adult probation does these services. And then the next series of questions are, have you ever had any experience with this department? If yes, then there's a series of questions. If no, then you just skip it. So we've got that whole series of specific questions that are further down in the survey that you haven't talked about yet. So it sounds like you want to get into those specifics, educating the public about, here's the services we provide. Then if you have any experience with it, how would you rate these specific things? Which is what's in the survey. It sounds like the generic or the general questions at the beginning of the survey are those that you're not really interested in because you're not sure what value they provide.
That's correct.
And Kevin did say he'd like to make a couple of comments, so I'd let him get up and speak.
Well, and when you prepare it, instead of stating this is what we do, I'd like to know, are you aware of? Are you aware that adult probation provides? Because that would give us an idea of where, okay, maybe we need to do a better job of letting people know that this service is available. Please.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, you know, I've been here through a lot of the past 18 years of watching the county execute surveys. I think one of the biggest struggles is what Paul was trying to echo is that why is somebody taking the survey? How is it going to benefit? The reason I say that is because, and Paul and I had a discussion last week, we're in terrible competition to have somebody take their valuable time to take a survey. So much so that if you go to a place like Panda Express, you turn over their receipt, you get an actual free meal. If you fill out a survey, call them and fill out their survey. And the next time you come back, you get a free meal, okay? I
don't think it's a free meal, but you get an
entry. You go to Walmart, and they put you in the running for like $1,000 Visa card. This is what we're up against to get. So for the public to be engaged for a survey, you know, that tells me that, you know, there's got to be something in it, and we're not giving away anything. But if their voice truly counts, if what they're doing is going to be connected to some of the decisions that you make, maybe we can make that leap. I can, you know. We'd love to see somebody 2,500, 5,000 responses to a survey. But in order to achieve that, there has to be some meat to the survey, some outcome that the public can appreciate. And that's the struggle for us.
Tell them we'll reduce their taxes
So,
if they
first,
ask.
whatever it is to incentivize that their voice everybody says your voice counts in a survey. Well, it really needs to count in order for somebody to feel like I'm going to take some time.
Right.
Now, really quickly, how long do you like taking surveys? When people call your house or somebody call you, you mind taking a quick survey? Think about that too. I take these things all the time at my house, and I'm like, God, if it goes over 2 or 3 minutes, I'm like, I want to hang up. I do hang up the phone sometimes. Now, on a final note, personally, from my standpoint as a manager, I understand that you all might have a goal, but one of the goals that, because I had this thing come across, what questions do you want to ask? I want to know, for me personally as a manager, what modes of medium of media or communication people are using so that I can better communicate with them. That may differ from what you all want. So again, I'm not trying to throw a monkey wrench into it, but it takes, that's why we hired ETC back in 2005 and paid them $40,000 or $50,000 to execute a survey, because that way we knew that we were going to get so many respondents. We were going to get a cross section from each city in the community, which represented a good cross-section of the entire county residents, city of Yuma, Somerton, San Luis. They made sure that they made that cross-section. How many of them were English? How many of them were Spanish? It's all the scientific data to make it a plausible survey. So that's just the advice.
But and you mentioned something that it's always been somewhat of a thorn in our side, at least my side, and that is, somebody must know the numbers, but this county is what, maybe 60% Hispanic? And
yes.
Yeah. And and that's only the countywide. In reality, South County is probably like 70% Hispanic. And, as much as we try to stay away from the, ethnic designations and so on and so forth, we really don't have a very good way of communicating with them, in terms of our, products. And to add insult to injury, most of them come from a country where this level of government doesn't exist. So to add, so that makes it even more complicated. So maybe what we need to do is go back a little bit and do an informational, educational type process where we inform people about what county government is and does. And then from that particular platform, go into, okay, now we're going to deal with communications, or we're going to deal with this department, and do those more specific surveys that are very simple. Just a question, one question or two questions. Okay, what do you think about public works?
Do you watch Channel 77?
Do you watch Channel 77? Would you watch it more if it was in Spanish? Those kind of things. They're more specific, and it doesn't mean that we'll conduct a survey that takes 20, 15 minutes of somebody's time. But we will be asking specific questions that deal with specific departments or issues that we have something to do with, or that we can have an impact on. Maybe that's what we ought to do. Instead of having one major survey, we'd have 10 small ones.
Caution the board, basically over the past, again, 18 years. And this is something we did when we built the website. Yeah. Staying away from I think. Because all of us have an opinion of what we think will work in a survey, but unless that survey returns results that you can use, it's a worthless survey. So you need to get focused on what it is you want to achieve from your survey, how you're going to execute the survey, how you're going to implement the survey. It's a lot more complicated than what you.
So did you get your answer, Paul?
Yep. Yeah. What I heard is that we want to not include general questions that we really have no way of doing anything about, like, what do you think of Yuma County as a place to live? Because there could be so many other factors in someone's answer. That's something that we could do anything about. And that you do want specific questions. You want to inform the public about the services the counties provide, and then ask questions about their experiences with those departments.
Can we?
And you want it to be a series of smaller surveys so that it's not going to take forever for someone to answer them, and they only answer the questions about those things that they have experience with or have knowledge about.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
sure.
What is the intended method of distributing the survey? How do we intend to put it out? And the reason I ask that question is, in thinking about surveys, the comment that Kevin made, I agree. I get very frustrated if I'm taking like an online survey, and all of a sudden it just seems like it's going and going. I just punch out.
Mhm.
I don't mind taking 2-3 minutes. I frequently do surveys because not everybody does, and so when you do a survey, you're speaking for a pretty large group of people. So your opinion counts, but if it gets too long, I just bail. So I don't know what method we're going to use, but depending on the method, it would seem if we're going to plow our way through all of the various departments, we can't do that in one survey, but we could continually survey with small, short surveys, 1 or 2 departments, where it is a very brief survey. Your response rate will be much higher if it is that way, if that makes sense.
Mr. Chairman, and to go back to the format of the survey, Supervisor McLeod, you're exactly correct. This is not one entire survey. Each one of the components is broken down separately. So let's say you haven't pulled a permit at DDS or haven't been down to development services for any reason. You don't have to go through and filter through and skip over the development services section. If you want to click on for the Sheriff's Department, then you click on the survey specifically for the Sheriff's Department.
And are you going to disseminate this via email, or how?
We are going to go through a promotional campaign, emails, using social media, and using, what we're going to also do is we're going to take and monitor our initial responses to the survey and then follow up to see if we need to do some phone calls or eitherwise adapt or change up how we're using that to promote the survey.
I would suggest that for the information to be useful, we break it down and say 10 small surveys of 1 or 2 minutes each. And then we just simply take that particular survey. It's just a question or two, and that's it. And then we move on from that one to another one and see how successful we are picking up responses. I don't think that doing a full survey, considering how much competition, what the competition is out there, it's going to work out for us. I mean, we have 2, I think more than 2, but probably 2 very large hurdles to get over. One is, do people understand what services we actually provide as a county? 2, have you specifically dealt with any of those, other than maybe the county sheriff or, the communications or the judges or something like that? So to me, we need to utilize this tool as both an educational tool and a tool to provide information for us about, in other words, the question is going to be, DDS is a department that handles this, and that in the county. Have you had any experiences with them, and can you tell us about it? Something like that. So you explain, first of all, what the question's about, or you explain what the department does, and then you ask them a question, and then you make it simpler by having them rated between 1 and 5. If they don't want to go into a long and lengthy explanation about, what experiences they had, you said rated between 1 and 10 or 1 and 5, and then, do that. And then you ask, do you want to say anything about it? That's it. You only, you attach them with the question, you get the answers for that question, and you do whatever you feel that, you need to do about it. Because if we ask people if they like taxes, I tell you, I know that 9 out of 10 are going to say, and the 10th person is going to be like, I don't know, Lynn, that likes taxes. She's out of here, so.
So what I would like to do is I'll work with the staff to refine the questions and the process of having little mini surveys. Bring you back like a demonstration of what it would look like.
And then
so
we'll
that
take
you
it from
can,
there.
yeah, so you can kind of see, is this what you had in mind? Because I think I'm picturing what I think you're wanting to do, and I'd like to actually bring it to you to say what would be the resident experience if we were to put this survey out. How would they go through the process? And then you can see whether you think that meets your needs and what your intentions are to get.
And
that.
please, work with the communications department in creating something that's eye-catching, that, attracts your attention. And maybe, tell them at the end of this survey, you may be one of the qualifying for a for a trip to a Gulf, everything paid or something.
Well, I'll take it. Yeah. Mr. Chairman, too, when you're doing
Take
it,
Martini.
if we can put up a little, I don't know if we'd said this, but like a little blurb describing what the department does. If they want to take the time to read that, it'll give them an idea of exactly what service is provided by each department.
Mr. Chairman.
And I have an additional suggestion. Every one of us, I think, maybe, has like a Facebook page that we could actually utilize to send out a survey ourselves. It may not be the right tool, but, it will give us a sense to, it will give us an opportunity to broaden the reach as long as, the residents of Yuma County. You couldn't do that? Well, the communications department stepped up.
We can do that all day long. We did that during the last one. Again, I don't know what, and Paul and I have talked about it, what are we looking for in a return of surveys? What's going to be a good amount of surveys I don't know what that number is. I know we personally, between the two of us, would love to see 2,500 to 5,000 return. We think that's reasonable. Can it be done? It hasn't been since I've come here.
Well, the problem with social media is that essentially, your friends may be from China or someplace that it really doesn't matter. I mean, I remember, I don't want to bring the old souls issues back, but I mean, but I'm going to, if you have 300,000 likes, fine, but if 18 people around you don't like you, it's the problem. So
it is complicated, but you hit on a nerve, is that, what's the payout to incentivize? I try to explain to Paul is that my job is to get people to the door to notice that the survey is there. Whether or not they click through and take the entire survey is a whole new animal.
Chairman.
Go ahead, Supervisor McLeod. I know, I'm sorry, you.
John, I doubt that we have the ability to put up a price, do we? Does the county have the ability to say you'll be put into a pool for a $500 gift card or something like that?
I don't know that.
How about free legal service?
Can't do it.
No,
nothing free.
Get out of jail free card.
I don't know the answer to that, but I will note that the corporate entities that Mr. Tennell used in his talk were purely an example and not meant as an endorsement by Yuma County of any services provided therefrom.
That's right. That's right.
I don't know the answer about providing something like that. It might be something we can do. We can look under the Title 11 with the sundries laws that allow counties.
Okay, that would be good to know.
It's like advertisement.
If you can,
It's an advertisement package.
Response rate.
Maybe you can, a day
Or
at the county
Supervisor
attorney's
Reyes.
office.
Yeah, we have those. They usually don't come because they want to, though.
All right, Paul, I think we've gone through this one quite a bit, so I think we're starting to define that a little bit. It may take us 12 or 14 more meetings, but we'll be fine. All right, the next item in the agenda is the planning and zoning agenda, which means that full legal descriptions of property sites for all rezoning cases are available for public review at the Yuma County Board of Supervisors office. We do have reversion hearings, which is in accordance with section 404.01, parentheses 1, parentheses 7, I think it's 1, or it might be L or I, of the Yuma County zoning ordinance. The board will conduct a hearing to grant an extension of time to comply with the schedule for development, determine compliance with the schedule for development, or cause the property to revert to its former zoning classification in the following cases. One is Development Services Planning and Zoning Division rezoning case number 0533 in accordance with the Yuma County zoning ordinances, action to grant an extension of time to comply with the schedule for development, determine compliance with the schedule for development, or cause the property to revert to its former rural area 10-acre minimum zoning classification. This got a lot of assessors' parcel numbers, and they are located on Sierra Sands Drive, near County 15th Street, in Yuma, Arizona. There will be a dreaded PowerPoint presentation. Staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Javier Barraza, Senior Planner, presenting this rezoning case number 0533. In front of you is the current zoning map showing the current condition of the subject area. It's highlighted and cross-hatched. It's composed by 8 parcels now. This is the original zoning map at the time the case was filed. It was 1 parcel. Since then, it was split into 8. This is the site plan provided by the developer at that time. This is the way it was supposed to be broken, divided into 8. And it was approved by this board with following a schedule for development. The all required improvements, including the filing and approval of a tentative plan within 2 years of board's approval. B, within 3 years of board's approval, the filing of a final plan. C, covenants and conditions and restrictions shall be attached to the plat of the subdivision. That a homeowners association shall be included in the combined CCNRs. The CCNRs of the new subdivision shall place the same restrictions and limitations on animals that is contained in the CCNRs of the original Sierra Sands subdivision. C is the F, same subdivisions, and G, prior to development of the subject property, the land shall be level, same elevation as the original Sierra Sound subdivision. H, the tentative and final plat shall include a 1-foot non-access easement along the east boundary of the subject property to prevent direct access to Avenue 5E. I, at the time of the submittal, the tentative and final plat shall show building and envelopes for future structures on each lot. The envelopes shall meet the minimum setback of 60 feet from all lot lines. This aerial photography shows the current condition of the subject properties. The current status is as follows. The original deadline to comply with the schedule for development was October 17, 2008. On December 17, 2012, the board approved an extension of 2 years to comply with the schedule for development. The deadline expired on December 17, 2014. As of today, the schedule for development has not been met. The board has the following options. A, grant an extension of time to comply with the schedule for development, or B, revert the zoning to its original rural area 10-acre zoning classification. Staff recommends revert the zoning to its original rural area 10-acre zoning district. Mr. Chairman, one owner is here. He's the owner of parcel number 34. And this concludes this presentation. If the board has any questions for staff.
Sure.
Supervisor McLeod.
Javier, I assume these parcels, how many of them have been sold off from the original developer / owner?
Mr. Chairman, I think all of them.
All of them.
Yeah, we go back to how do we do this? Every time this happens, we go back to the fact that, you know, we need to have a tool that basically doesn't allow individuals to get away with not
Mr.
doing
Chairman,
improvements.
Mr. Chairman, these parcels were created during the process of the rezoning case.
Yeah, I recall this one,
yeah.
For sure. Yeah, I just, as a comment to staff, I'd really like to fast track our request to get stuff like this in front of us that predates the lot split requirement.
Yeah, meanwhile, these parcels are all locked in the system, so whoever, requests information on these parcels, that will come and will be informed, whoever, inquires about them, that they're subject to the conditions of approval or rezoning, so they're locked.
Yeah, and we all know the problem is people don't know to ask.
And
the
they
realtor
don't.
doesn't have to tell them, neither does the title company.
That's right.
So people are buying them, and
then finding out
it's
they
not
can't do
illegal, but
anything.
it should be. So, but like I said, I'd like to fast track those that, we've asked to get in front of us so we can start dealing with it. At least prevent some other sales.
Knowing what you know, how can you recommend rezoning it back to RA10 and making every one of this non-compliant?
Mr. Chairman, that will provide the opportunity for every individual owner to seek their own rezoning. Staff believes that will be kind of hard to come together and develop the subject properties into a subdivision. That's why our recommendation is for reversion, so they can intend individually.
But who's going to build? The first one has to build the road. That's impractical.
That's not fair.
Yeah, if I was an owner, I'd want to get together with everybody and pool resources and get that done. That's what I would want to do. But
Mr. Chairman, Maggie Castro, Planning and Zoning Director.
Maggie, will you please come up?
The reason staff is recommending that the zoning be reverted is that when the case was approved by the board, it was all under the same ownership. So the owner at that time, the intent was to construct a subdivision. Since then, the parcels have been sold to other property owners, and they may not necessarily have the same intent of building a subdivision, which is it requires roadway improvements, it requires dedications, it requires forming of a homeowners association, and agreeing to CCNRs. If the zoning is reverted, as the case planner stated, it would allow the individual property owners to seek their own rezoning cases. At that time, staff would process them on a case-by-case basis and make a determination as to what improvements will be required. And depending on how many owners come forward, we may require similar improvements to what a subdivision would require, because
8 lots were created, which triggers compliance with the subdivision regs. But at that time, staff would have to do an individual determination as to what improvements would be required for each of the 8 property owners.
Yeah, you know, Maggie, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, sure.
I don't think I can get behind that, and here's why. Chairman Reyes probably remembers this case. There was a huge outcry from the neighborhood. I mean, this list of requirements is quite extensive, and I don't recall any other one being created quite like that, requiring CCNRs and all. But we made a promise to those residents that this wouldn't turn into a debacle, and that people who developed there would be under the same CCNRs, and there would be some control. And if we just revert that and go one-to-one, we can never require the CCNRs, limit the animals, all of that stuff. And we would be breaking our promise to those residents that there was an outcry. I'm sure you recall. We went out there and visited that, I recall. So
I know several owners that back up to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel for the current property owners, but they really need to get their ducks in a row and cooperate and get it done, or they have a piece of property they can't do anything with, which is quite unfortunate, and the board would love to prevent. But I can't see going back on our word to all those people who showed up and protested that thing. They were satisfied with the result that we gave them.
Mr. Chairman, one way to solve that would be to, under a new rezoning, would be to require or to suggest that the property owners come in under a planned development, and we could put all of those requirements under APD.
Okay, I can get with that. Good job, Maggie.
You know what? My problem is that essentially, the moment we revert this back to the original zoning, every one of those is it's not in compliance. Has there been any permits that have been requested yet?
Mr. Chairman, the only ones that were permitted were granted in 1995 for the pro shop, the building that is there. That's the only one we have.
So at this particular time, nobody's come forth and said, I want to build anything in there, in any of the slots.
No, Mr. Chairman, we have one owner present.
Right there.
See, that's my point. See, yeah, I knew I was going to get to it somewhere, but see, that's going to be my problem.
Mr. Chairman, we may have had property owners that came forward and asked what the requirements were to develop these properties, and and I think the case planner stated that the parcels are locked. So if they were told that in order to develop the property, a subdivision needs to be approved and the improvements need to be in place prior to the county issuing any permits, they may have walked away and either not purchased property or just not done anything with the property.
Well, the moment we do this is, it's going to mean that, until this problem is resolved, they basically bought not usable property that's unusable. Right. Because you can't get a permit. But what happens if we grant an extension? There's an effort between all the property owners to contact the previous owner and see, is that a possibility at all? Or is that, let me finish. Or is it possible that we can remove or add, at this particular time, remove or add restrictions to this particular zoning case when it comes for reversion hearing? That might be a legal question I'd like to have answered, because...
Mr. Chairman, I think the only options the board has at this point is the ones presented, grant an extension or revert.
Well, the question still continues to be, is during the process, not necessarily the reversion process, but the rezoning case. Can a rezoning case be reheard after it's been done? Maybe that should have been the question.
Mr. Chairman, the answer is no.
No? That was pretty
That's
blunt. I thought legal would say something like, we'll research it and get back to you. No? In other words, once the rezoning case is done and it goes into effect, then the only options available are either it's done the way it's decided on, or it has to revert to the former zoning for it to come through again, if we want to make any changes to it. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Mr. Chairman, I think the reason why, if you understand the rationale, is when this first came to you years ago, there was public hearings and people were available to discuss it, and decisions were made at that time subject to those hearings. And to change it now would just be undoing that whole process.
Well, okay.
I could go
Okay,
back
you
and
wanna say
research it
something,
more if
Supervisor
you'd like, but I'm just trying to give you the
guys- need to
rationale
let me know if you
behind
wanna
it.
Say something, because
I have a
gotta back
question.
up a little bit to see you. Supervisor McLeod, then Supervisor Pancras. Just because he's bothering more than anybody else. Okay, go ahead.
You'll enjoy it.
Maggie, you mentioned the planned unit development. How would that work? Let's just say we agreed to revert it. How can we require those property owners to come in as a PUD instead of separately?
Mr. Chairman, it would be, at that point, it would be a suggestion that staff would make to the individual property owners coming in and seeking a new rezoning case, that it would be, they would have a higher probability or possibility of a new rezoning case being approved if it came in under a PD versus a straight rezoning to SSB 5. Because under SSB 5, you really can't put any additional restrictions other than what the SSB 5 zoning district already requires. Under a PD, you can customize it to match what was approved under the rezoning case 0533.
And I don't see how that differs from just continuing it. They still got to get together and cooperate. And I think that,
It's a suggestion, not a.
yeah, because I'm just afraid, I mean, who knows? You know, there could be
It could be one or two don't
turnover
wanna
on
do
the
anything.
board, and then the next board goes, well, yeah, that's not fair. We need to let them develop. And then we've broken our promise to the people who showed up here en masse when this was done.
Mr. Chairman, under the new case, staff would notify adjacent property owners of a new request. Right now, like I stated earlier, the original zoning case came through as one property owner, maybe two at that time, if I remember right.
I think it was a partnership.
At this time, I believe that all of the parcels had been sold to to other property owners, so they wouldn't,
That's okay.
Go ahead.
Finish it up.
So depending on how many property owners currently exist, then they may or may not necessarily agree to come in as a subdivision. Like I said, under individual zoning cases, staff would make separate requirements as to what improvements would be required at that time.
Can this be done as a commission initiative?
Mr. Chairman, that is a possibility, but all of the property owners would have to agree to come in as a commission initiative.
Well, I don't see why they wouldn't, otherwise they can't have use of their land for what they hope
But I don't
intended to.
I don't see how it differentiates from.
Well, that means that it doesn't have to come from them. We could solve the problem ourselves. That's what it means to me. You know, we will have to deal with it. If, you know, a commission initiative gets going, everybody's noticed that there's a commission initiative to turn that, to fix this problem. Then it goes through the commission. You ask them to come in and, you know, do, you know, whatever their opinion is. But at the end of the day, we have a tool to solve the problem, whether all 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of them are in agreement or not. Because we may be able to solve the problem.
We make the subdivision.
Exactly.
Mr.
We
Chairman,
make the subdivision.
No, it's not a subdivision.
Oh.
It's something else.
Lynn had a question.
But Lynn had a question, and I didn't
But
want
we
you
do,
to.
a commission, tell
Initiative,
me what
commission.
that.
Okay,
Maggie,
explain
tell
the
me-
commission
Chairman,
initiative.
even under a commission initiative, we still need the property owner's permission to bring them under a commission initiative.
Oh.
Yes, I know, but it's a lot easier than trying to get them all to coordinate and, you know, and put it all together by actually telling them, look, we're going to try to solve this problem. This is the way we're going to try to do it. Now, are you in or not?
Well,
You know, if they don't want to come in, then I say that, you know, our, you know, commitment is to try to solve it. If they don't want to do this, it may be, this is the way we suggest that we could solve them. You know, please come in and sign, be a part of it.
Mr. Chairman, I was
Supervisor
wondering, have we
Simmons.
sent out anything to all these property owners to let them know that this is a chance that it's gonna get reverted back? We know we have one of the property owners here.
And
What
we'll
are the
get to
other
you, sir.
7?
We'll get to you.
Mr. Chair, state law requires that we notify current property owners of this action that's before you today.
Did you send it certified or did you just send it regular?
Mr. Chair, state law requires that the notice be sent by certified mail. And
So
it was sent
they are
certified
aware
mail.
that this is.
Yes, and you know what? As soon as we do something, they will all come. Okay, thank you, Maggie. I'm gonna try to see what the gentleman here. I'm gonna, have the gentleman here. Open up. I'm opening up this item for the public hearing. Would you please step up, sir? Give us your name and address if possible.
Mr. Chairman of the board, good morning. My name is Jerry Belucas. I reside on 4474 West 16th Street. I am the original purchaser of Lot 34. I have not sold, I have not resold, I have not sold anybody else and bought it back from anybody else. When I purchased this, to give you some background, and I'm sure Supervisor McLeod knows he's been along with this issue. To give you some background, those you might not know, so we can make a logical decision on this, this was the old Sierra Sands Golf Course. The old Sierra Sands Golf Course was termed unviable. The individual that got involved was, as I can only describe, as an unprincipled developer. He took the property and it went from him to his brother to the brother-in-law and back to him. He took that property and decided he would subdivide it and try to sell it off and make a subdivision, which was fine, except he used the financial Ponzi scheme of we went from development to development and he ran out of money. What I purchased was based on the issues that Mr. Barraza read up here. That was the reason I purchased that development, because it was SSB 5, because it would have some control in the county, and so I could reasonably count on what kind of neighborhood I would live in. This was purchased as a retirement home. I have not been able to build my retirement home. So far, my dreams have been shattered by this whole event. The issue now sitting in front of us is whether we give an extension or do the reversion. I know several people in Sierra Sands and Purple Mountain, and they are going to be pretty excited if any of the issues that we agreed with them, and with the original developer had meetings with those people, and if any of those items are changed, I think you're going to hear some people coming fairly unglued. I purchased that property based on that. Now there's the way the road was set up and everything, the base was laid, the trenches were dug for utilities, but that stopped at that point when it went bankrupt. I'm at lot 34 there. If you go back to reversion and I have to rezone for, let's say, RA5, now I have to find a place to put a road. Where am I going to put the road? Where am I going to bring in the utilities? How am I going to bring it in? The next person has another lot. Where are they going to build a road? Is it going to be in violation with your agreements with those people in Sierra Sands or Purple Mountain? And then second of all is when anybody talks about that 5E, go out there with anything other than an ATV and it's absolutely useless. That 5E extension is absolutely useless. That's not an acceptable road. So you can't do anything with that. So now I've got all of those issues to deal with and to whether or not, and then plus the fact that all of the engineering has been done for Sierra Sands 2, the tentative plat was laid out, all that expense has been laid out, and now I would have to come up with access for a road, how I'm going to get through property, and I'm going to have to come up with additional engineering, which is going to be incredibly costly. I tried before to contact prior owners. Did I have any success? No. They didn't get back to me. Would I still like to do it? Yes. If the rest of them got in with me of the new owners, I would say yes, I would like to do that with them. But so far, nobody has cooperated to come forward and do that. And so when it goes back to RA10 and reverts, I'm the original owner of that property as it was subdivided, and I'm going to be the one left holding the bag. That's all I can tell you. So I'm asking for an extension myself. Any questions for
Is
me?
there, yes, go ahead, Supervisor McLeod.
I'm sorry, sir, if I didn't catch it. Did you buy, how many lots did you buy?
Lot 34, just lot 34.
Okay, you bought just lot 34. Okay.
Yeah, but there was some discussion earlier about all the lots have been resold, and no. I was the original purchaser of that lot. Has not been resold.
No, I think the point was they've been sold from the original developer. The person who came in and asked us to approve that has now sold off those 8 lots.
Yes.
Which is not illegal, but I think it should be, so.
Well, there was some discussion with several people in the staff here that the sale was actually illegal, but nobody seemed to oppose it.
Okay, any other questions or any questions? Now, what we're looking for, sir, is trying to find a way to solve the problem. Really, I mean, we struggle with finding the right vehicle, and we, in a normal situation, we would say that this is your problem, their problem. I mean, they should have, it's a buyer beware type of situation. But for some reason, we were the initial, I mean, we gave permission for this to happen. And as you can tell from the frustration level of Supervisor McLeod, you know, this is not the only time we've gotten into a problem like this, and we're trying to avoid it at all costs. You know, to have the same thing happen every time we do a rezoning that has conditions in it that aren't met before somebody actually buys a property there. So we're trying to figure out, and we have that in place. We have that in place now. But obviously, what we're looking for is a method to go ahead and try to solve this problem. If you're having problem communicating with the other property owners, it's probably because nobody really needs to or wants to deal with it right away. They will eventually want to deal with it if they ever want to sell it or if they ever want to develop it. So as you can tell from the discussion, we're looking at either telling you all, hey, look, you need to come in with the planned use development, get together and tell us, you know, we'll guide you through the process so we can get this into compliance, because they're not compliant now. Or we can take it through the commission initiative and tell you, okay, well, this is what we're doing to fix it. Come in, sign in, and hopefully we'll get them all to sign in. And this will be our way of actually taking some responsibility for it, although, you know, I mean, it's just sort of a side way, but, you know, because sometimes getting everybody together to do something is a problem. It may not be intentional. It may be that some of them live in New Jersey or someplace that they're in Alaska. And so that's what we're trying to do. Now, the question is, do we revert it back to agricultural 10 and not agricultural, suburban, yeah, 10? Oh, and that creates a problem, an immediate problem for everybody, because now you're not compliant. You can't do anything about it, you know, with it. Or we will grant an extension and allow you all to try to put something together and bring it to us as a method to resolve, or bring it to them as a method to resolve this issue. I think those are the options that are left to us. It's either we revert it back and have it be a situation that you have to deal with, or we wait a little longer. I don't know what waiting a little longer would do for you.
I don't know the answer to that either.
But you're asking for it to stand.
But the reversion, I know the answer to that. I know that all the expense is going to be involved in the reversion process. And how do I get access to my property and everything else?
Okay, all right. Well, we'll ask that question in a minute from staff. I mean, we can ask this question right now. Thank you, sir. Okay, now if we go through with the reversion, what does it mean to a property owner in that particular area? Other than the fact that he will immediately be non-compliant because he will have a parcel that's too small.
That is correct, Mr. Chairman. That will be the end of it. It'll be a non-compliant parcel at this point, and they will need to either come individually and rezone it, or to bring it into compliance.
They would have to individually come and rezone it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you can't, if I may, Mr.
No,
Chairman.
sure, I can see it. Oh, go ahead.
When they come in, we can't require them to meet these conditions that we put on there as a result of the public hearing and the promises made to the surrounding property owners. I can't see reversion being a solution. And you still, Maggie, and I appreciate the PD suggestion, and which was a good suggestion. However, that still would require all of them to come together. And I don't see how
you force them to.
You know, like property owner number 17, whoever that is, could hold the other 7 hostage to that situation. And that seems unfair. The only thing that seems fair is to continue this thing. It's fair to the surrounding property owners. It keeps the promise that we made to them. And it requires those property owners to join forces and, you know, get the improvements done so that they can develop their property.
So we turn the responsibility we gave the developer into the property owners there to comply with the.
You're gonna have to. I don't see any other choice. There's no other choice
that
allows us to keep our promise that we made to dozens of people who showed up here with their,
I remember.
with their, you know.
All right, does anybody
concerns.
have any other suggestions? Do you want to, don't get into one.
You don't want me.
Oh, yeah. He's gonna back up and say, how did this happen? You know, the board before me got this problem in 2005. I can repeat it if you want to.
Three times.
In other words, he just don't want to rub it in. That's what his answer is.
Thank you.
No.
No?
I don't
All
have
right.
any questions.
All right, okay, then, I'll entertain.
I mean, Chairman,
Yes?
What was
Commissioner?
that suggestion that you made?
Oh, the commission initiative suggestion,
Mhm.
which means that instead of waiting for the property owners to, I guess, organize and do whatever, we say we have a commission initiative and tell them, would you like to participate in it? It may be a way that, nobody has to pay fees because it's a commission initiative. And we get to do a lot of the planning and a lot of the suggesting how to solve the problem. It means we take the lead, basically. Well, the planning and zoning commission does.
Yeah, yeah.
Without cost,
You
without.
have it.
Well, the
But you
the
still
reason,
can't force those
I
property
know,
owners
but
to
at least you say,
cooperate.
look, we can do a reversion. Excuse me, we can do an extension for, let's say, 2 years. And then we can begin a commission initiative to solve the problem. In other words, it will be internally created by the commission, and it would be a way to not have one individual in there take responsibility for it, try to bring it forth. And in other words, the efforts to get all these property owners to come forth will be the county's effort, not necessarily just the individual, like in this particular case, the gentleman that bought lot 34. It would be us sending the notices, doing all this other stuff.
Maggie, is that a possibility? I mean, could you
I'm always-
start a commission initiative when we already have a zoning in place?
Mr. Chairman, yes, we could do that. Like I said, all of the property owners would have to agree to be a part of the commission initiative. If they don't agree, or if we have property owners that aren't interested in being part of the commission initiative, then they would have to be excluded from
the
case.
planning. Yeah, well, that would mean to me that they're not interested in solving their problem. But it would also provide the people who are interested in solving the problem an avenue they can follow without having it cost them individually to bring forth, a process. So in some ways, I think we're trying to help solve the problem by
Yeah.
doing something proactive instead
Yeah.
of waiting
No,
for somebody.
I don't mind doing that. But.
Well,
I don't either.
it's a way.
Okay.
I think
If you're ready
staff
for a
is,
motion,
I think staff is willing to help solve the problem. They're trying to, but, I understand the problems you have when you're trying to communicate with people who may or may not have bought this, or because in the future they want to do something with it, and they're not interested in doing anything now, but when they come to that point, they're gonna want to have a solution. So why not say, look, you already got problems, we'll extend it for a period of time, 1 year, 2 years, and work on this. Anyway.
Maggie, something the chairman just said made me think of something. Is there a mechanism, maybe using the commission initiative or however you could do it, is there any mechanism, let's just say the gentleman has a rich uncle, leaves him a bunch of money all of a sudden, so he can put in, let's just say an individual put in all of the improvements necessary so that they could build on their property. Is there a mechanism that would require the rest of the property owners, when they come in for a permit, to be required to reimburse the person who put the money up?
You do that in cities, but cities can't do that.
Cities do that.
It's called a shared agreement or something, but the county may not have the tools.
But we've got a sharp county attorney, he's gonna figure out how we can do that.
I don't know about that.
I'm not aware of any such authorization to do that.
It's a cost sharing agreement of sorts, but it has to be signed into by the participants. In other words, you have to sign in to say that
Well, it
is.
was
Cities
nice,
can force people to pay when they hook up into the system. That's how it's done in
Yeah.
cities. Because, if
You
you're
don't
gonna
get any
hook up, you're gonna have to
electricity.
pay a portion of the
Mhm.
development cost.
Mhm.
That can be done in cities, I know, because, we do it all the time. But I'm not sure we have ever used that tool in the county, and if we have that tool available to us. But I'm sure our capable county attorney will research the matter and come back to us.
They
if that's
can't put in a septic or can't get,
Well, it's a street improvement. The biggest cost is going to be street improvements.
I
Because
know
we're
that.
not bringing in sewer systems. Everybody's going to build in a sewer on their own, or the wells, the water. So it's
Mhm.
not a matter of sewer or water.
that we
It's a
can do
matter
it.
of roads
Okay.
and utilities, power, roads and power. And that can be done by an improvement district if they were willing to work towards that. But that's the only available, really, the tool available is to create an improvement district. to
Maggie,
cover
is that possible? Could that, if you got 4 property owners,
51%, 5.
if they have
Yeah, if you get
51% of the
then you're
area,
fine.
Mr. Chairman, I think the issues you guys are, you have to think about is that this rezoning really isn't complete until targeted issues are met, contingencies. So although you have a plan, it still needs to be completed. So if you're asking to go in and get permits to do certain utilities or things like that, they're going to run into a roadblock.
Right. Well, here's how I see it. What I see is there's this situation where 8 property owners are stuck in a situation where the improvements necessary to make the rezoning stick aren't done.
Right.
So now what's left for us to do is figure out a way, or for them to do is figure out a way to get that completed.
Right.
So that their zoning will be vested.
That's right.
And the tools available to us, from what I can gather right now, it's one, we could go through a planned unit development, which will mean that there will be a way to get this, this done if the landowners, are willing to participate. It will create a method. It would create a method to really set the requirements again. But now it would make the property owners responsible for those things. And then after that is the way to make these improvements. The rich ankle theory, I don't think will work very well. But an improvement district may, because it doesn't require 100% of the property owners to get that. I don't think you need to have all of them. So you create an improvement district that makes the other property owners responsible for some of the improvements in that, done for the general good. Those are the kind of, steps we're taking. I know it may be new, it may be different, but it may be the only way we can move this process forward to a point that we make the property owners understand that this isn't going to be resolved without their participation in one way or another. Otherwise, they're going to have a bunch of properties that can't be used, period.
Mr. Chairman, can an improvement district be used for that purpose?
I thought she said yes.
If you got 5 out of 8, create an improvement district, now everybody has to cooperate.
But you almost have incomplete zoning. Those lots exist subject to certain contingencies taking place. Yeah. You don't have that.
But if they form an improvement district and put those in, then the zoning vests.
That's right.
Well, I know. I don't know the answer. We could research it and come back.
Okay. That's the question is, can an improvement district be formed
before the vesting is done?
Before the vesting is done, for the purpose of putting in the improvements necessary to vest the zoning, and then everybody has the opportunity to develop their properties. Mm-hmm. And the properties become more valuable as soon as that's done.
And it gets them.
I mean, that's an interesting question. You can bring that back to the board at some point.
Well, my only thought initially, my gut reaction is I'm looking at what appears to be 8 lots, but really it's one big one. And some people have bought little sections of it that may or may not vest in zoning.
Mm-hmm. Truly.
So those lots are there, but in a way they're not.
Until the zoning is vested.
They're lots and they're sold and they're owned by individuals.
Oh, they were sold. They sold in, family farms have undivided interest in farms. You don't know where the acreage lies and what you own. That's not unusual. You have 8 people that have almost a shared interest in one big lot, and they sort of put it out in meets and bounds on where their property lines would lie if this
done in a Gulf all the
zoning never takes place.
I don't think.
No, I mean, that's what the plan unit,
that's what the recorder's office, there are measurements that says, I own this.
I agree,
right?
I agree, but the zoning is still
participate or not.
At a stage now where you can either extend it for purposes of meeting the contingency or revert it back. And that tells me that it's not vested.
Well, it's not, no, the zoning's not vested.
The responsibility is.
If they could do an improvement district, at least if you could get 5, all this gentleman has to do is get 4 more neighbors.
We could go back and look at it.
Okay.
That means
By the way, I don't think we're going to get, the question before us today is whether we revert or not.
That's right. And so if you revert, that's not an issue.
That's what I'm saying, okay?
Have you closed the public hearing yet?
I am, unless there's somebody else on the public that add to the confusion, is there anybody else? No? Okay, then, all right.
I'll give you one more comment.
You got to come all the way because I don't think they can hear you that far. Come forward. The people, the millions of viewers.
I understand the legalities. I understand how it works. And when you get the plat approved and the zoning approved potentially, it's not really zoning until it's put down in the county recorder's office. I understand that legality. But the reality to the purchaser and the customer is we are buying a piece of property that is going to end up under those conditions. So to say that, okay, well, those conditions really don't meet, and I understand the legality of they really don't meet until it's recorded. However, what you've done is defraud the buyer, the homeowner, the potential person who's going to develop that property with their intent of purchasing X, which had been approved, but because X wasn't finalized, then you end up with Z. And that's the rub. That's the part that has me irritated, for sure. I can tell you that. The only other issue that I can probably give you, maybe something to work on, and I don't know that the county has the wherewithal to do this, if you could end up with some kind of financial system to where the property owners, you could come up with an amount to finish it, contract with somebody, and then say, here's your 15-year amortized payoff.
As a
schedule.
district.
So
An
that-
improvement district.
So that they could actually afford to go through that process while developing the property.
That's what an improvement district would do.
And then you could comply with the promises met to Sierra Sands and Purple Mountain people that I know came in here.
But we're going to research that, whether legally we can, do this, both those as a, let's narrow it down to both, one as a planned unit development, either generated by you and the other property owners, or as a commission initiative to create a planned unit development that, we'll sort of force the issue. And then deal with that. It may be that during this time we define the fact, or we research the fact of whether an improvement district can be formed by the 8 participants, and create an improvement district to do the necessary improvements to make that best that situation. So either way, I think we're all kind of looking at extending the time to be able to find a solution for you all.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
All right, so no more public discussion. I'll close the public, hearing and go back to regular hearing. Is there anything else staff wants to say? No, thank you. Staff, supervisor, the board?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes?
I move that we, in rezoning case number 05-33, that we grant an extension of 3 years to comply with the schedule for development.
That's longer than the normal 2 we give out.
I agree. I second.
Oh, well, okay, then. I guess you can only be pregnant, not a little bit pregnant, huh?
Well,
all right, 3 years, then,
You wanna
3
make it
years.
2?
No, I don't want to make it anything. It just, it's like kicking the can down the road. If you can kick it 3 years down the road, you could kick it 4 down the road. We might not be here.
Can we also request, I know now we can discuss because we have a motion in a second. Can we also request that staff do a CI, commission initiative?
Mr. Chairman, if I could just
That's a commission.
We've got some direction already from the discussions, and you're limited on what your motion as it stands is consistent with what we have on the agenda.
That's right. And the commission initiative is something that needs to be discussed by the Planning and Zoning Commission as a tool. Maybe they'll,
Okay.
And we also have the question.
Right. Any
of
more
the
questions?
Improvement district. So.
Any more questions from the left? No questions from the right. Questions from the left? None? Okay. All those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we'll give you more time to hopefully find a way to solve this dilemma. Thank you very much.
Maggie's going to have it fixed up.
Yeah, that's right. Now, the next one is rezoning case number 0653. In accordance with Yuma County zoning ordinance, action to grant extension of time to comply with the schedule of development, determine compliance with the schedule for development, or cause the property to revert to its former rural area, 40-acre minimum zoning classification. This is assessor's parcel number 188-20-002, previously 202-14-002, located at the northwest corner of Highway 80 and the alignment of 47 3/4 in East Stagna, Arizona. All right. Is this the ethanol one?
Yes.
Okay, now, you want to do a presentation or you want to get into your
Mr. Chairman, if you
recommendation?
would like to hear a presentation, I can go just.
I think so.
directly
There's
to-
new board members here. They may not have heard about,
Okay.
this project.
Okay, this is the zoning map, and only the cross-hatched and highlighted area encompasses this rezoning 06-53. The rest of the parcel was rezoned under rezoning case 08-3 that already has an extension of time to comply with conditions that will expire on April 7th, 2019. This is the original zoning map of that case. This is the entire area site plan, and only the dash rectangle shows what encompasses this rezoning case.
Yeah, we were.
And it was
Yeah.
approved with the following schedule for development. Prior to development or within 5 years of approval, a traffic study shall be done. B, prior to development or within 5 years of approval by the board, all improvements required by the traffic study shall be constructed. C, all required permits for the proposed ethanol plant must be obtained within 5 years of approval by the board and finalized as per appropriate code requirements. This is the current condition. This aerial view. Current status, the original deadline to comply with the schedule for development was January 17, 2012. On May 13, 2012, the owner requested an extension of time of 5 years to comply with the schedule for development. As of today, the schedule for development has not been met. The board has the following options. A, to grant an extension of time to comply with the schedule for development, and B, revert the zoning to its original rural area 40-acre minimum. Staff recommends the Board of Supervisors grant an extension of time to April 7, 2019 to comply with the schedule for development. So we try to synchronize the two
properties.
Extensions of time so they meet and we can process them together from now on.
All right.
This concludes this presentation.
All right, this is a history that we, I guess if you've been here long enough, and I've been here long enough to remember when we were so excited about getting a refinery, an original refinery. First, it was a plan to build a fuel refinery. We got excited about it, and it sort of went away. And then we had an ethanol refinery come in front of us, which is this one. So we were still excited. It's a smaller footprint, but it was an exciting time. We thought that it was a viable project. We thought so at the time, and I guess the owner still thinks it's a viable project. So staff seems to believe that granting an extension, if nothing else, to put those parcels all together in the same time frames. I know that the owner, I guess, because I think I've read it somewhere, he's requiring a 5-year extension or asking for a 5-year extension.
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
I don't know, I'm going to open it to the public in case there's someone from the public here. This is the public hearing. Is there anyone from the public here that wants to address the board on this particular issue? I don't see anyone. I'm going to close the public hearing, go back to the board and see what the pleasure is. Now, to define it, the staff is recommending basically a 2-year extension, basically, I think. And the owner is requiring a 5-year extension. I don't have any particular choice.
Last conversation that I had with the applicant, he agreed with that new extension. I explained the logic behind it, and he agreed to it.
Okay.
To what?
To the 2 years.
To the
2019.
To have it done until April 7, 2019.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, the reason for staff's recommendation, I'm not sure if it was clear, to grant an extension to April 7, 2019,
yes,
was parcel 2 was rezoned with 2 rezoning cases. So the other rezoning case, which is case
0653, that one, 0803.
Yes, the other rezoning case expires in April of 2019. So if we have the 2 rezoning cases in 2019 come back for either an extension of time or reversion, the board will at that time consider both cases. Additionally, when these 2 rezoning cases were approved, there was also a special use permit that was approved for the ethanol plant. That special use permit no longer exists. They never complied with the conditions of approval. There was also a variance case. Both of those cases no longer exist. They failed to comply with the conditions of approval, so they are null and void. If they ever wanted to develop an ethanol plant in the future, they would have to come back, if the zoning is still in place, with another, both possibly a variance and a special use permit.
Okay, so if it's, if the owner is in agreement with the 2-year extension, and those other zonings are related to this, right?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, is there anything else from the board? Nothing else, I'll entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion, we accept the staff's recommendation of extension till April 7th, 2019 for zoning case number 06-53.
There's a second.
Second it.
Motion and second to accept the staff recommendation on rezoning case number 0653. Any more discussion? No more discussion. All those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Okay, number 3.
Wait,
What?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Oh, too late. Move on.
That's what I'm afraid I'm gonna be told. It dawns on me after the fact that granting a 3-year extension in the previous case may have been a mistake because a 2-year would have put a more of a sense of urgency. So for legal, the question is, as a person who voted in favor of that motion, can I ask for reconsideration of the motion? Can that be changed?
I as the chairman of the board, can tell you I'm not going to. But you can ask.
No, I can ask.
The item's already been voted on and moved to the next item.
Thank you very
You
much.
can't ask for reconsideration.
No,
If you're
it's like an alternative.
technically, once you vote on an item and move to the next, under open meeting law, it assumes the public signed off or is no longer watching or able to chime in at that. If that
Makes
was
sense. I knew that was gonna be the
We
end.
could do it at another
guys,
meeting
3
later
years,
on
I said
if you
3
want
years
to
was
put
a
it
long
on for an
time.
item agenda to be
Do the next
reconsidered.
meeting.
No, it's fine, it's fine. Look, 2 years, look, you're gonna, look, the urgency, it's on the owners, not on us. Really, it really should be theirs. You know, if they don't do it, 2 or 3, look, if they don't do it in 1 year or 2 years, the 3rd year they come for an extension, we'll say, we'll give you plenty of time. You know, 3 years is a long time. And I think that, I don't wanna redo that
Okay,
motion,
well,
but.
it just occurred to me, I wish now I'd done to a little more, perhaps the other property owners that would have sent more
Well, too late.
urgency, but,
Let's move on. Let's move on. Don't cry. Don't move on. Let's move on.
well, I'm trying to figure out whether or not I want to actually use the Kleenex or not.
Don't take the box away from the man. All right, let's go on to the next
He's
one.
already moved it away from himself.
I moved it out of the camera.
Oh.
Development Services, rezoning case 0719. In accordance with the Yuma County zoning ordinance, section 40401L7, action to grant an extension of time to comply with the schedule of development determines compliance with the schedule for development or cause the property to revert to its former rural area 10-acre minimum zoning classification on assessors parcel 754-35-013, previously 101-18-061, located at 17295 South Avenue B and a half, Yuma, Arizona. Just let me ask a question before you begin. Why are they previously something else?
Because the parcel numbers have been changing dramatically 3 times, so we want to refer them, do some historical, so we can connect old parcels with new parcels.
How were they changed?
Assessors, they renumber books and organize, a couple times since this rezoning.
All right, okay, that answered that question. Let's hear the PowerPoint presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Javier Barraza, Senior Planner, presenting zoning case 0719. In front of you, the zoning map showing the subject property, crosshatched and highlighted, still 1 parcel, 10 acres. This is the original zoning map at the time, 1 parcel. This is the site plan that the applicant at that time presented in order for, there was, wanted to create 4 parcels, 1 4-acre parcel and 3 2-acre parcels with a 20-foot wire access easement on the north 30 or 50 feet. This is an aerial view showing the current condition of the properties. There's a side-built home and accessory structures on the southwest. It was subject to the following schedule for development. A land division shall be applied for. Also by recorded deeds, the applicant shall split the subject property. And C, all lots resulting from the proposed split shall be provided with means of irrigation and access to irrigation water, and then a letter of requirements from Unit B irrigation district. Also the improvement of the proposed 20-foot wide access system on the north 50 feet with a standard number B was required. Also, developer must satisfy all Yuma County Flood Control District requirements for drainage along private road. And this is the current status. The original deadline to comply with the schedule for development was September 5th, 2008. On June 15, 2015, this board granted an extension of time of 2 years to comply with the schedule for development. The deadline to comply with the schedule for development expired on June 15, 2017. As of today, the schedule for development has not been met. The current owner contacted staff on November 27 and submitted a written request for an extension of time to contemplate his possibilities. The Board of Supervisors has the following options: grant an extension of time to comply with the schedule for development, or revert the zoning to its original RA-10 zoning classification. Since this recommendation was formulated before the owner, came in contact with staff, we were recommending reversion, but now staff want to amend this recommendation and convert it to recommended for an extension of time or 1 or 2 years. The owner did not specify how long.
All right.
This concludes this presentation.
Any questions from staff?
Yeah.
Supervisor Mata.
Javier, it said a land division shall be applied for and approved. That's how we're preventing sales of lots without the zoning vesting. Is that correct?
That is part of the conditions. They have to apply for a land division permit first.
I don't remember us having that provision as far back as 2007. I thought that was more recent.
This is 2007-19. It was September 25th, 2006 when land division permit started being required.
Was that far back?
Mm-hmm.
Is this owner a new owner? Or this is not the original owner?
No, sir. At the time of the first reversion, he was in the process of buying this. So it was part, I think, the realtor, the one that requested on behalf of that owner at the time to request for the extension of time to give the new owner that possibility of developing the property.
Remind me, what isn't done yet?
Nothing, Mr. Chairman. The parcel is still one parcel. It hasn't been developed. Nothing has been done. And now the new owner is thinking about probably, he came into knowing the conditions of this rezoning case.
Now, does the new property owner understand what the conditions are for that zoning?
Mr. Chairman, we sat for about 30, 40 minutes and explained to him what it will entail. He couldn't be present today because he started a new job.
Okay, we're going to find out in a minute if he's available. All right, any more questions from staff? I'm going to open this to a public hearing and ask anybody here in the public that wants to address the board on this particular issue. No property owner here? Nope. Makes it a little tougher. I'll close the public hearing, go back to the board for their decision. Again, this is a 2008 case. I know that from 2008 to 2015, nothing much happened in development. So we've taken that into account. I think, 2 years ago, we started to go back and look at some of these reversions. I know that Supervisor Porches will probably kindly remind us that that's a long time and that we're already given one extension. But being in development most of my life, I can tell you right now, not much happened between 2007, 8 and 2014, 15 in terms of development, almost anywhere in the county. So, I wish the new property or the property owner that is supposed to be doing this thing was here so I could ask him, okay, well, this is not about giving you an extension every time that you request one. This is about, you being able to deliver on these things. Otherwise, all we do is just kick the can down the road. But, since this is a new developer or a new, owner, I guess I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. He's, I don't think that reverting back is going to help anything. So let's, unless the board has another problem, I'd say.
No, Mr. Chair, I had the opportunity to speak with the owner, and he wants to comply with all the, so that's why I actually had a talk with him and what the county was doing. So he said, well, maybe I just started right at the right time so we can do the things right.
Okay, well, if he's willing to do the things right, he should, I wish I could have asked him personally, but I guess the staff is you guys are, well, hell, what are you guys recommending again? Reversion. Yeah, I gotta get my act together
We
here.
amended a recommendation to an extension.
Oh, you amend, that's right. That was the last portion of your recommendation, because the written one says reversion.
Yes.
That's why that was a little confusion there, because I thought you said amended to 1 or 2 years or something.
Mr. Chairman, I didn't want to change the PowerPoint that was sent.
All right.
Sending the agenda.
See, that's why I read it. Anyway, the recommendation staff, the amended recommendation staff, not the written one, is to grant a 1 or 2 year extension depending on the board's decision. that correct? Is that correct?
Correct.
Right, guy. Is there any discussion?
Maggie, did you want to say something? Okay.
No, don't say that. You know, Maggie, you know, when she says
She
something, she's
started to say
powerful, you know, she's making. Okay, I'll entertain a motion for either reversion or an extension of, say, 2 years to be consistent.
I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the amended recommendation by staff with a 2 years extension.
I second it.
Then motion and second to approve a 2-year extension for this particular case, which is case number, move my pages over.
RZ 0719.
Oh, you got that? It's 07/19. Okay. All right. Is there any discussion on the motion? No discussion. All those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Motion approved. Oh, anybody opposed? No? Okay, motion approved. The next item is the event calendar, current event. Before we go into this, there's a question for me about the work session and, well, forget about it. I'll ask it when we get to it. Events calendars. I'll begin with Supervisor Simmons, just to throw everybody off. Supervisor Simmons, I know you wanted to have an extra 10 minutes to put your thought
I'll make it
together.
as quick and as painless as possible. Attended the Yuma Area Ag Council meeting, also the power lighting that the Caballeros did over at Friendship Park. Held a community meeting out in the foothills, which was very well attended, about 60 or 70 there at the meeting, so it was very well attended. Also had a meeting with Fish and Wildlife, trying to figure out the Castle Dome situation as far as the bypass road, as well as a chance I got to meet with Senator McCain's people last week to also discuss that, see what we can do to get this issue solved before it gets out of hand. Attended the NACO conference last week for peer exchange. Talked mainly about serious mentally ill people in the system and how we can get them identified and maybe get them out of the one system and into another. And that's about it.
Thank you. Supervisor Porges?
No report.
Right. Supervisor Pancras?
I attended the Regional Council on Aging in Parker. I attended the NAU Advisory Council and met with the NAU president and talked about ways that we can increase enrollment and different ideas. I went to the air quality meeting on 197 Main. I attended the WACOG meeting, and I went to the Yuma County Chamber of Commerce Transportation meeting. I attended the Hospice of Yuma board meeting. I went to the very first annual artist celebration it's called Art Awakenings for those who suffer from anxiety, depression, other similar mental illness situations. That's it.
Supervisor McLeod?
People are aging.
Huh?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, that we
Didn't they tell
we
you we're
talked
too young
about,
to do that?
no, we talked about Meals on Wheels and waiting lists and stuff like that, yeah.
Supervisor McLeod?
Attended the Chamber Legislative Affairs Committee, greeted Congressman Gosar's staff person at City Hall. She was a steady stream. She was staying busy. And also attended the JTED Workforce Development Council meeting.
Right. I attended the Western Arizona Council of Governments Executive Board meeting in Parker, where the decision was made, again, to approve the distribution method that gets us in Welton, gets the county and Welton the next year's allocation of CDBG funds, which we don't know yet what it will be, but you know, hopefully it will be around the same figure that we got last year, which was like $1 million something, which is split between Welton and Yuma County next year. You know, among the items that were discussed. I also attended, and I think Lynn attended too, and Lynn, am I forgetting, I'm not forgetting, but did we mention the annex, the $6 million
Oh,
annex?
I forgot about that, the
Oh, that's right.
annexation of the.
Yeah, Lynn and
did
Supervisor
too.
Porches, I think, also attended. Weren't you? You didn't attend? I'm just drawing a blank here. But there was a groundbreaking ceremony in Sanders, Arizona for the construction of a $6 million pedestrian, you know, annex which is the largest investment yet made on, improving the flow of pedestrians across the port of entry. It's sort of odd because, I was a mayor in San Luis when the first port of entry was, the structure was, the ribbon cutting was during my tenure as mayor. And it's incredible to think that 30 some years later, we're looking at the first major improvement to that facility. It's a $6 million improvement. Now, I know there's a lot of enthusiasm in San Luis about the fact that the skinny budget from President Trump had $234 million set aside for improvements to San Luis One port of, crossing. But I hope something develops out of that. So we also had a GSA presentation about what we could do if we got those $234 million for the, for the crossing in San Luis. I don't want to rain on their parade, so I'll leave it at that. I also attended the Arizona-Mexico Commission meeting in Puerto Peñasco over the last 2 or 3 days. I think that it was an eye-opening experience for me because I think that I went to those meetings a lot when I was mayor. So I guess I was used to taking into consideration when things were happening. It's very difficult to be a spectator when when you're so used to being like an active participant. But I think it will take some time for the Arizona-Mexico Commission to understand, and I made that point clear to them, how difficult it is for me to conceive that they deal with those border issues simply mayor to mayor type of situations and leave all the counties aside. There's nobody from Santa Cruz County, there's nobody from Pima County, there's nobody from Maricopa County, or just me from Yuma County. It's very difficult to, and I explained that to the commission, the members of the commission that I had a chance to talk to, but I think they're missing out in a lot of strength, because a lot of the issues that happen, especially border issues, don't happen just in the cities. They, the sheriff department, all the impact of immigration, spreads out. So it's difficult for me not to see, for example, a county attorney explaining what the impact of illegal immigration processing, legal processing, costs counties and so forth. So I made that point clear. I think I made it maybe in not at the right meeting because this was focused a lot more on issues from the Mexican perspective. They were dealing with issues from the Mexican. There was a lot of discussion about NAFTA. There was a lot of discussion. As a matter of fact, they had the main negotiator of the NAFTA agreement coming from Mexico City. They had ambassadors. They had the governor. There were some pretty heavy hitters at this meeting, but you could sense it was more focused on the Mexican side, right? On the impact of all these things that are happening right now. Julie Engel, Julie Engel, it's part of one of the committees. She used to chair one of the committees, I think, the Economic Development Committee. So she had a very prominent part in some of the discussions, specifically about cross-country companies located in the border. Flex, there's a lot of conversation about a company called Flex and some of the larger companies that are coming into play. The mayor of San Luis did a very impassioned, presentation on border crossing and the time it takes to get across. And there was the usual mayor's meeting with the governor, which again, supervisors don't get invited to. I made that point, clear. Hopefully now that we're members of the commission, things will start to improve in that way. But it was still a very, very good meeting. The facilities were great. I mean, I hadn't been in Puerto Peñasco in some years, but what I saw there really left me stunned. I mean, there's a reason why they're talking about bringing in cruise ships into Puerto Peñasco, the port. It's because now I think they can handle a lot of that added tourism. It seems to be a pretty good time for those particular areas that we talked about. I think that's pretty much my report. Administrator Susan.
Yes, I think, Chairman, the comments you just made about the Arizona-Mexico Commission Summit that you attended, I think shows the importance of us being a member and maybe even encouraging those other border counties to become members so that presence and that kind of top of mind, hey, counties have a role in this as well, would come through to the Arizona-Mexico Commission even further instead of just you being the spokesperson, if we can have other county members be the spokespersons as well, that could help. I did attend the services for Frank Carrillo, who is a longtime community member of Yuma County, as well as a former city administrator for Somerton, and then Habitat for Humanity executive director. Very good services, remembering his life and his contributions to the community.
When was that? I didn't.
Saturday afternoon.
I didn't receive a notice.
So it's very, very good. Very. Everybody shared some fun and heartfelt and poignant moments from his life and their impact on his family and friends. So it was really a good service to go to. And follow up to a couple of items that are going to be coming to you at our next meeting. The PTO buyback will have specific numbers for you on the funding required, because we're getting all the requests from individuals on the PTO buyback. So we'll have the impact on all the various funds throughout the county. And then also we're going to be bringing back a recommendation to make immediate improvements at 197 South Main across the street, so that we can totally seal off the unfinished portion of the building, so that it doesn't impact the occupied sections of the building. So we're bringing that back to you at your next meeting for consideration. That's all of my report.
In case I forget to mention this, because I always normally mention this, in case you don't get an invitation, a direct invitation, which I think you would get, the Comité de Bienestar Christmas party, which some of you have attended, I think, in the past. It's happening this Friday, beginning at 8 o'clock in San Luis. For board members who like to attend or administrator, I'll get the information out to you. All right, I was supposed to say that, and I forgot that. Anything else? Nothing? Then we're going to move into the work session, discussion and action. Yeah, I'll take that. My question on this is, why wasn't it just a part of the agenda? I mean, you know, if you have a presentation like this, why isn't it just a part of the regular agenda? Is it? I mean.
Well, it's really an opportunity for you to provide feedback. It's a discussion item as opposed to being an action item. So.
It's discussion and action.
No, presentation and discussion on proposed
No, it says work session, discussion and action item.
Okay, but the actual specific item on the health district is.
No, that's what I mean. What I mean is, normally a work session will be a work session. You know, there will be no action. But
presentation discussion, it doesn't call for action.
Well, look, maybe I read it wrong, but it's in the work session, discussion and action item section, right? So if it says presentation and discussion, it doesn't mean that it can't be an action item, right? So, you know, all right, okay, no, this is good. Give us 5 minutes to, gather our,
Oh, I thought you were giving me 5 minutes. I was like, I can do that.
Well, you had like, an hour and a half to prepare. We need 5 minutes just to
5-minute break?
5-minute break. You guys can do whatever you want to with.
Okay.
5 minutes.
I just take a break whenever I need it.
All right, well, to clarify the statement earlier, this is a work session. But because in the past, we may have, wanted to take action after something after the work session, maybe the direction would have been a little thing. We wanted to cover ourselves by actually putting in there that it could be an action item, okay? So that means we can work on it and actually make a decision, or we just simply work on it and give you directions, okay?
Okay,
Thank you very
sounds
much.
good.
All right, so, wait.
Oh.
So the action here is the health district. There'll be a presentation on proposed changes to the environmental health fee schedule. Now, before you start,
Yes.
are these proposed changes to the environmental health fee schedule mean for us to set up a time and date when they can be actually discussed in public?
Actually, well, eventually, if that's the direction. Right now, I
Well-
just kind of,
See, that's why I asked that question. I think it gets to the point of what a work session really means and what an item, really means, because a situation like the environmental health fee schedule is something that we normally discuss in public. It's an item in the agenda, and it's, for you to schedule a date, and then we come back on that date and talk about the changes. To put it in a work session schedule, where, just didn't want to imply that we're not going to be discussing this in public.
right,
okay?
right. And
This
it
is a public
is.
public work session anyway. Okay, so go ahead. Sorry. I won't interrupt again until 2 minutes from now.
Okay, until the timer goes off.
Until the timer
The
goes
big
off.
hook drags me away.
And before we begin,
Okay.
work session to me means the difference between the work sessions that we normally set up for and the work session that I like to see happen is when you have like staff, that there'll be like a table where your staff will sit so that we can call upon the staff instead of sitting back there, like hide. I know that guy in the back is hiding, but so next time, even though we don't set up for like a works, like for like one of those round table discussions, I would like to have your staff either sit in both sides. In other words, that make it look like a work session. Come forth. We promise not to charge you anything.
So
This is not.
we will introduce them.
Yeah, they keep hiding in the back. There you go.
Good job, Chairman.
There you go. So we can actually point to the one we don't, All right, good.
All right.
There we go.
So, am I clear? Good morning, Chairman, members
Morning.
of the board. My name is Diana Gomez. I'm the director for the Yuma County Health Services District. I'd like to introduce you to my team. On my great left, we have our Deputy Director, Maria Gomez, followed by our administrative... Maria Nunez. Can we reschedule this work session for a different time?
I know I make you nervous, but...
Real fast.
All right, well,
Let's reschedule for
anyhow.
11:40.
And then followed by the rest of the Gomezes. We have Jose Trigueros, who's our administrative manager, Monty Stansberry, who's our environmental health manager, and Fernando Desardin, who's one of our environmental health sanitarians. So that's my team, and I'm hoping if we have any questions, if you see me, I'll call them, but now you know who they are. And the reason we wanted to come forward and have a work session was really to have a dialogue about some of the things we're doing in environmental health. And wanted to look at the fee schedule. And there's been some questions, so I figured this would be a good opportunity to have some dialogue, get some direction from you on which way we should proceed, or if there was any specific items you wanted us to look further into, but it would give us an opportunity to set the table and then later, obviously, have a very public discussion, again, if there was anything regarding the fee schedules that we wanted to move on. So to give you some background on environmental health is a department that ensures the food safety, not just food, but environmental health safety in general. So we have a variety of delegated authority. We have delegated authority that comes from the state health department. We have delegated authority that comes from ADQ. And we have authority that's set forth by ordinances by you, the Board of Supervisors. So the last ordinance that was passed was number 07-04. And that actually repealed the first sanitary code that we have that was put in place in Yuma County on May 6, 1968. So that's how long we've had these rules in place. It was amended again in 1985, and then it was repealed and completely replaced with the latest version of the ordinance, which actually was adopted by the board in April of 2007. So what that does is that gives us the authority to not only issue the permits, but also conduct surveillance and the enforcement piece. So if you look at our fee schedule, you will see, you should have a copy of that, and you would see the actual fees. And then you'd see our proposed fees. One of the reasons that we wanted to look at the fee schedule is that it hasn't been updated in at least 10 years. It's probably longer than that. I don't have any recollection of any time since I've been here. I've been here 19 years when it was updated. There has been revisions to the actual health district fee schedule, and that could be a little confusing. And if you look at the bottom of the fee schedule, you'll see that the latest revisions were done in '07, and that's when we adopted the resolution, but no fees were changed. Then in 2011, there was changes to the fee schedule, again, not to the environmental health fees, but to other fees in the health district. We removed some items, added some other stuff. Again, in 2013, nothing changed for the fee schedule, but we did add some expedited services. And then again, we added some immunizations and some death certificate and birth certificate revisions. So those were, because it's the fee schedule, it's one fee schedule that's posted on our website every time it's adopted as a whole. So despite the fact that there was no revisions done to the environmental fee portion, it's a little confusing when people look at it and they see that it's been revised. So I wanted to clarify that. So one of the things that we're working on is we've seen an influx in restaurants. We've seen an added people deciding to go into business. Mobile units are very popular now. If you can recall, 15, 20 years ago, they were there, but not enforced like they are now. We've seen more festivals, we've seen more special events, and so we're trying to educate the public about what they need to do. We also want to conduct an outreach campaign, and if you see, one of your attachments was a schedule, and you'll see that it started with this presentation, this dialogue that I'm having with you. And then we also wanted to do some specific workshops for people. A lot of times people, even though these have been enforced and these rules and regulations have existed, sometimes people don't know. And people are accustomed to look at the business requirements. I need a business license, or I need to pay the participant fee for that particular event, but they don't realize that they also need an itinerant permit. An itinerant just means traveling, and that's a daily permit. That's actually in the ordinance that was passed by the board. And that they need that somebody in there, depending on what they're preparing, needs a food handler's card. There is an exception to that. Most of these foods have to be prepared by law in a commercial kitchen, and most people seek out that provision and they follow through. There's an exception that was provided by the State Health Department, and that is the Baked Good Confectionery Act, which means that foods that pose a diminished risk can be prepared at home as long as they are properly labeled as being such. So what would happen, for example, there's a list of foods, and those would be basically like hard candy, cookies, muffins, and they have to be properly labeled. So they would say, for example, if it was my business, I'm selling cookies, the back of it would have to have ingredients, sugar, ice, in case somebody has an allergy, just so people know. And then it would have to say something like prepared in the home of, Diana, and it would have my address, my phone number in case somebody had an issue. So those are the exceptions. That's the only exception. So I think you register through the state for that particular item, and I checked a little while ago, and as of December, we have 90 people in Yuma County that are taking advantage of that exception and are selling baked goods, again, properly labeled and with the approval of the state. Yes?
Mr. Chair, I have a question. What about bake sales and things like that
So
groups have?
bake
Is that
sales and things
something?
like that. So if it's a school function, most of those are purchased the majority of the time when there's bake sales. So people purchase the items very rarely, but we don't currently inspect those.
Okay.
And if you look at the fee schedule, going back to your question, you'll see that there's different types of fees. Most of those places, for example, the schools have commercial kitchens and they have that availability to people. The concern again is when people are baking, like if I'm making sushi at home and I'm preparing it at home. Our job is to protect the food chain, and it starts, as you're aware, there's regulatory functions stemming all the way from the farm to how things are stored, to how things are prepared at home and then distributed. So what we want to do is we were looking at revisions that we want to do in the division as a whole. One of them was we really need to get out there and educate the public about what the rules are. We need to be consistent in the enforcement, because sometimes people get excited, somebody new comes on board and they're not aware. And so you're supposed to have a permit, again, like so when you have an event like the county fair, all those people have their food card and then they come and they pay the $11 per day, we go and we inspect them. The majority of time when our inspectors go out there, they go out there. If they see something minor, they provide that kind of guidance, and it is fixed right away, and it's business as usual. Very rarely, but it does happen, is somebody doing something that we would consider something where we would have to cease the operation. So maybe they're cutting or preparing food on site. Maybe there's potential for cross-contamination, where we just have to suspend that operation. We don't want that to happen. We don't want that to happen because we want to stimulate that business opportunity for people. That is a field that a lot of people are getting into. It's a potential business venue option. And again, when we have these festivals and events, we want to have a diversity, and we have to have the biggest participation. So we're embarking on this outreach and education campaign. So we're going to be doing some workshops. We're going to be we want to work with maybe the city and some of the municipalities, the Chamber of Commerce, so that they can educate. As soon as they plan an event, they can direct the public to the steps they can follow. Yes, sir.
And, do you have anything to do with the, like somebody setting up a grill out here on a street festival and grilling hamburgers or hot dogs and selling them? Do you have any part in that?
Yes, so normally what we would have gotten is so for example, let's say there's an event that just happened. We'll call it like a holiday event. So like what just happened.
Tamale festival.
Yeah, just a festival.
Well,
So
they
what
do
we
the
do is
Christmas lighting.
so we'll get a list of vendors, and we'll get a list of vendors, and then what we do is we do outreach to them. And so we'll say, you're required to have this. These are the criteria. It's a very defined criteria. You need to have, this, and that. And so we sign off on it. For example, with the Tamale Festival, we've been working with them for the last 3 years. And we're getting ready to do an educational session again with the vendors. When is that happening?
Tonight at 6.
Tonight at 6. So that gives them an opportunity again to ask questions. We then go out there. And so if we can identify anything beforehand, that's what we want to do. If we ask questions and if we see that they're not in compliance with something, we want to address it before the day of the event, because we don't want any additional distractions the day of the event. And obviously a lot of preparation goes into it. And most importantly, we want to keep the public safe. And so we don't want somebody to have a negative experience because a step was missed. And then, for example, then that vendor tries to come back later and they have that negative stigma associated with either the vendor or the event, which is what we don't want. So we try to be proactive as much as we can. So that's what we're doing with the Tamale Festival. And so we've had similar ones. I know Fernando has gone, for example, to the Yuma County, like, for example, the housing development and the Housing Authority, and worked with some of the residents who might be interested in doing that. So we're thinking of doing that on a regular basis throughout the county. We started the process of translating all material in English and Spanish because we did not want that to be a barrier. We want to do those on-site trainings because we realize people may not be able to come to the health department. It's 8 to 5. Transportation might be an issue, so we're looking for sites throughout the county to host those trainings. And again, food handler cards, which is the other piece of it. And we want to be able to have that education. I know, for example, in Dayton, we go out once a year and we do a mass training, and they have the ability to do their tests there, which, is a lot easier than having to come into town. So we're looking, that's something new. We've always done it at Dayton. We're looking at expanding it to just make that user accessibility there. Plus, we're hoping that it promotes people wanting to go into that business and participate who might otherwise think that the process is perhaps more complex than it really is. So we're hoping to stimulate that growth in that particular sector. So given that, going back to the fee schedule, the fees, when you look at it, and I know you're looking at a fee schedule in front of you. For example, a food processor, you can see, for example, the current fee is $165, and you can see the proposed fee next to it. And to give you perspective, our analysis across the board, we compared with other counties, Coconino, Mojave, and Yavapai primarily, and we're significantly lower, significantly. So for example, for that one, the food processor fee for us is $165. Coconino would be $335, $370. Yes.
Before you go down that path, let me tell you what I, as a supervisor, I've learned over time, and I guess legal is here to tell me that again. As supervisors, fee schedules that get approved by supervisors have to have a nexus to cost. Otherwise, they end up being a revenue producer as opposed to charging for, the actual cost of doing the task. I mean, now this is a new lesson if in case the supervisors didn't know. When I looked at your fee schedule before you get into it, because otherwise I would be asking you to actually justify every fee increase. I have a tough time already when you, for example, would charge a daycare center $300 and a bar $185. See, that to me doesn't really make sense. Or you charge a school. I think it was like a school is school grounds, $200, and then a campground, 250, and a children camp, 250. See, I don't. I mean, I'm sure you have an explanation why there's differences between those. It's just that on a common sense kind of situation, it really doesn't make any sense. I mean, you're looking at, and I can go down the road. The first thing that strikes me is that the increases are, 100%, 150%. So that really, I know that the word tax doesn't, apply in this particular case. But part of what I like to see, it's not that these services are driven by the the revenue side.
Right.
That they're driven by the fact that the health district's main goal is to keep things healthy for people. So, when you make a permit for a peddler, I don't know what a peddler is described as, but I mean, I suppose just by the name that is someone that peddles stuff. And you increase their permit, I think from 83 to 225. You know what the peddler is going to do is not get a permit. See, that's what I'm concerned with. You have to have a sense of what you want to achieve with these fees. If what you want to achieve with these fees is to make it more sustainable, I don't want to use the word profitable, sustainable, then that's okay. That's one purpose. But if what you want to do is protect the health of people, you want to make them as affordable as possible so people don't feel the need to avoid paying them. So, I hope you take that into consideration. Now, the second part of that is I never liked they're charging more in other counties kind of thing, because it's not a justifiable reason for me to support a fee increase. It's just, I just wanted to say that. And I know that was probably a little early, but I know that, I just had to say that. When I look at your fee schedules, I go back to probably Supervisor Portia saying, why didn't you increase them gradually? Because it really is a shocking change. I mean, it's not a 10% increase. So either you were not charging enough for 10 years, okay? And you want to do that all in 1 year, change it so that you could do it all in 1 year. Or you're simply not taking into account the fact that the higher you make the fee, the less likely that you're going to have people wanting to pay it, especially if they're used to paying less. And I noticed that you didn't change the things that are really, I would say important to me, which is like the food handlers permit, those kind of things. You kept them at the same level, which means you understand that you want them to come in and get their cards. But I just don't see a nexus between, your different fees and the cost of actually doing the inspection.
So when you go back and all very good points, and to go back to some of those, yes, the fee schedule, when you look at it, it's a big increase. Again, the point of this dialogue was to have that conversation, because this fee schedule was set, whatever those fees were set back in 2007 again, and they're approved by the board. So if there's something we need to bonify, or we need that feedback, which you just gave me right now. If it's not coming across and it doesn't seem equitable and we need to look at it, then that's definitely something that we as a department need to look at. So one of the things in your packet should be an expenditure report, and you can see back to the cost of doing business, that the revenue, it is not revenue generating. These are actually the things that are, I would hope, make us cost, break even, because it's a user-based. If you are using the service, if you are the peddler or the vendor or the provider of that service, you're the one paying the fee. And so if you look at the blue, that's the revenue that's brought in. And if you look at the expenses of operating the department, they're not consistent. Yes, sir.
A couple of things.
Yes.
First, I got to know, what is a peddler?
So peddler, by definition.
I know what a peddler is, door-to-door salesman, but how would we regulate what?
So it's different in itinerary. Fernando, a peddler,
It's
you have a
kind of
more
like an
specific.
ice cream truck.
Is that what?
Correct. 'Cause right now in our county, we only have one licensed peddler, and it's a fellow that has a mobile unit where he goes with a little bell, like in the
Yes, on a
Neighborhood, yeah.
bicycle and
with
a little
with a
bell.
little bell, and he sells ice cream person to person. So we make sure that he gets his
he's a-
product from an approved source and that they're stored and distributed in a safe manner.
You're increasing his
So the ice
license
cream
like
truck should
3.
have a permit then.
Yes.
Yeah, I doubt they do then. I
The
know
ice
they
cream
don't since
truck?
there's only one.
No.
No.
Forgive me, Vice Chairman. That as far as the peddler, the other ones are larger operations. They're distributors.
Oh,
We have several
okay.
ice cream trucks.
Oh, okay, thank you for clarifying.
Dang it, I
The
lost
other thing, Diana, how do you attribute the huge drop between 15, 16, and then a big jump in 17? What?
So we had salary savings where we had 3 positions open in that department for a significant amount of time.
revenues.
So it was oh, I'm sorry, where?
Increase in revenues.
Oh, for like what is 16 and 17?
Yeah.
So one of the things we did was we went ahead and we did some additional enforcement, and we realized, by law, you can't have a permit without, you can't operate without a permit. And we realized that there were some people that,
So
some
maybe that's the
established businesses,
answer.
large businesses that had forgotten to pay their fee.
permit.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we went back
That's a very
and they
polite
remember, so that's why you can see the revenue.
Okay.
And people forget.
Politically correct.
So again, it's the consistency thing. And if you saw the cost savings in 2014, you can see that that's because we had the salary savings, which is a big chunk of the expenditures that go into there. And then we started that process of the enforcement piece, which is difficult to do when you don't have the staffing to go through it. So it's one of those things where it's incremental, and we want to continue, to make sure, because whether they have a permit or not, it's our responsibility to make sure it happens. And if something happens, we're still the agency responsible for monitoring an outbreak or anything else. So they should be following the law. Now, how we facilitate that process and the different steps we take to make it useful and not give them sticker shock, then that's how we have this dialogue, and we work incrementally towards that. I think the first phase is obviously the education piece and the outreach of why we need it. And that could be the focus this year, and we can revisit this again later. But I think nothing could happen viably on our end if people don't realize the importance of why we need the food card and the itinerant permit, which are the things that remain the same.
How many people do you have that go out in the field?
So we have 4 sanitarians, and actually right now, sanitarians are notoriously hard to recruit across the state. There is always a shortage, so we have 2 sanitarians, that for not Mr. Desardin being one of them, and then we just underfilled a position as a sanitarian aide that's in training, and then we have another individual who just came on board that just passed their exam. So recruitment, I know that was something that Supervisor Ferguson and I had worked on for a while. Was one of those issues where we struggle to even find the staffing.
Can you grow your own?
We could. There's a requirement that they need certain science courses, so we could definitely, we try to do that with the sanitarian aide position. It's somebody that's taken some of the science prerequisites. They're coming in on board with us. They're going on the field with our sanitarians. They're training, and they have an opportunity they have to apply to the Sanitarian Council. If they pass the exam, then they're full-fledged sanitarians, but we're giving them through that creation of the aide position that we worked with to create with HR, then it gives them at least some field training. And it's definitely something that we can expand.
Mr. Chair,
Okay.
Diana, do sanitarians have to have a college degree or just certain classes? Or is
Certain
there
classes.
a certification?
So you need basic science courses, and there's a minimum credit. I want to say it's 32 credit hours. Am I close to that? And they have a list of approved courses. So one of the things, like for example, as state officers, one of the things we're trying to do is see if there's some flexibility in that. But yes, it's a lot of field learning.
Yeah. Okay. I still, the fact that you gave me this chart, that you gave this revenue expense chart, it's even more troubling now to me, because what I'm interested in is knowing actual relationship between the fee collection and the hours it takes to do it, or those kind of things. I mean, things that are more directly related to that. Because this is pretty broad. It's a revenue and expense situation. And because it fluctuates so much, it tends to be troublesome because it's not steady. I mean, it doesn't show an increase in expenses and a decrease in revenues, those kind of things. And how they're, I mean, I suppose all these revenues and expenses are related to the environmental health, environmental health, and so on and so forth. But it seems to me, just using the last years, and you brought this up before I get a chance to do it, but if you had fiscal year, what is it, 16, 17, and you had this fee schedule that year, that would mean that your revenue would probably, I think the average increase that you have in there is about 80%, maybe 90%. Some of them you go 100%, some of them you go a little lower than that, but the majority of them either double or, are 150%. So that would mean that if the expenses remain the same, your revenues would jump, let's say, 100%. You would be making money, which is not, I'm not opposed to it,
Right.
but it's not, I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to it on almost anything but health. Health is an issue of reaching people, making them feel comfortable with using the service, because what we're setting out is to try to protect the public's health. So revenues have a direct correlation. I mean, the expenses, in this particular case, fees have a direct correlation in whether people use it. That peddler that has this little cart, that has these bells, may not be as willing, the one you have, may not be as willing to pay 200 and whatever it is. I don't see it in front of me, but I mean, it was paying like 80. It was paying like 80 some dollars or something like that. It was paying like $80 or something like that, or $85, and now he's gonna pay 200 and whatever. 225. See, if I was that peddler, I said, I don't know, whether I really, find that much value in getting a permit. If I'm the only one, I mean, the rest of them aren't paying anything, and I'm paying 85 because I want to be, like on.
Or I'll just wait till I get caught and then I'll pay it.
Yeah. Well, you see, that's what I want.
Which we're trying to avoid,
I know.
and that's why the
Sure,
fee, and you're right, that's why that sticker shock. So there's three types of inspection. So you have a limited inspection, and that's, for example, your convenience store, where a lot of stuff is prepackaged. And then you have a moderate, so that's your food, your big restaurants. And then you have a complex, and that's like a facility who is a restaurant that also caters. And so to give you an idea, we have 118, we roughly conduct 118 complex, which again is the catering restaurant / catering combination. And those take roughly about 105 minutes, and we do them twice a year, so it takes about 413 hours for one sanitarian to do that. And a moderate one, again, so your standard brick restaurant, we do almost 1,000 of those, and it takes about 90 minutes to conduct those, and it takes about 2,700 hours. So we certainly can go back and compare them, because even with the fee schedule, we even if we had those increases, whatever incremental, the goal, I don't think we'll get to the point where we actually generate revenue. We will come close to breaking even between the expense ratio and the cost of doing business and what we're expending. And maybe that, and then that's on us then, and we need to go back, which is why we wanted to have this work session, to go back and address all those topics, because that's important.
All right, okay. Supervisor McLeod and then Supervisor Porches.
A couple of things. Diana, when I was looking at this, I assumed this to be an annual fee, but I think I'm getting the sense, is this a per inspection fee?
So, no, it's an annual. So when you're looking at the fee
Annual.
schedule, with the exception of the itinerant, which is a traveling one,
Right.
that's every time you have an event, every time you participate in a festival, that would be $11 per day.
Right, okay.
Everything else.
Okay, so when I'm looking at the past year, revenues and expenses, just rough math, they're off by about 12%. And so I could get behind, a 12% increase in per fee. Like Chairman said, many of these, like the minimum, I think, is like 80%. And so I think a more moderate, 10, 12% increase, that we could swallow. But these gigantic increases, I'm looking at like a caterer. That's a huge hit. And daycare, those margins at daycares are tough. And so that's a big hit. I don't know. It just seems awfully hard to swallow, that type of an increase.
But just to make it, maybe make it clear, because you also did a revenues and expense report that is, actually numbers, right? Below that, remember? And in fiscal year 16-17, you were $42,000 short of being even. Right? Now, again, I'm not, actually, and I know Mayor Porches, Supervisor Porches is coming in next. Supervisor Yepes is coming in next. But, I know that that at some particular time, this is not a very, for me, this is not a very good chart. It doesn't show the need, because I think every individual fee schedule should be targeted to that individual particular action. But if you go back to, let's say, 14-15, in this particular chart, you had, expenses over revenues, you had minus. You actually made money.
Yes.
So that's weird. But you explained that. You explained that already. It was a matter of staffing. It was a matter of cuts. You explained that already. But that also brings home the point that changes based on conditions that have nothing to do with your inspections. Your revenues over expenditures. If you have a vacancy, it changes that. Right. So you see, that's not really good. I mean, for me to actually be able to grasp a sense of why you need to increase a fee, it'd be much better if you just simply said, this is what it costs us to do this. And, it's getting increasingly more expensive to do it. So now we'll increase it 10, 12%, 15% based upon that particular experience. But it seems to me you're taking this approach that, it's a whole thing, it's the whole thing. And that is a little difficult for me. But I know where you're coming from. I hope you understand where we're coming from when you increase that much. Supervisor Porches.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, first of all, Dan, I saw for the outreach. That's great. I think that's, we need to do that. But just looking at same as Chair said and Supervisor McLeod, the expenses. I mean, from just you're trying to go back 7 years and tack one or not the expenses, but the fees. That's just too much, I think. And one of the things that to Susan, so she can relate this to every other department. Yuma County is unique. And when we start comparing to other counties on fee schedules or any fee that we're gonna look at, I think we need to look at it through this county, just, what the needs are here. But because comparing it to other counties, that's not fair. But the expenses, how many employees or staff members do get paid by just the expenses, or what do you cover with the expenses?
So we have 4 sanitarians, we have 2 vector control officers, and we have 2, oh, that's separate? So we have 4, 5, 6, 7 staff members.
That are covered with those.
That are covered with the fees.
With the fees?
Sure. This is the
You need to step up because the camera can't catch her like that. Yeah, that's why I needed to have the camera set on.
Jose Trigueros. So this is the first year that we're gonna be fully staffed, the 7 positions, and it will cost us. I know that you keep going back to that expense report, but
But you put it there.
Yes, I know that's for that's history. That's history.
It is generating questions.
A fully staffed department will cost us $522,000.
How much?
$522,000.
All right. Okay.
Which is it doesn't show in that graph the history.
See, those are the kind of questions you're gonna get when you get the graph like that. And my other question is, just seeing the revenues, is it, should we start like going out and enforcing a little bit more? Because maybe those revenues are not there because we're not in, people are not paying.
Right.
So like as the chair said, if we tack on so much on a fee, we'll see that revenue might even go down more. So I just, for me, it'd be hard to approve a fee that high.
Look, I think that you're gonna get a very receptive board, and I think I speak for myself. If your fee structure was sort of, gradual, trying to reach, I mean, it didn't take us 1 year to get to this point. I mean, I think your initial statement was, we haven't looked at this in 10 years or something. It's difficult for me not to, not to sort of sympathize with the argument that Supervisor Porteous makes all the time about how do we get here, right?
Right.
And, we get here most of the time because, we sort of have and it's a good tendency, we sort of have a tendency to look at services, first. And then sometimes I think sometimes that gets us into problems because we're so concerned about giving people services and having them access those services and trying not to, shy them away with high fees, that sometimes we forget that, we're not keeping up. And then we get to catch up like this. And I guess catching up is not a problem. It's just catching up all at once that seems to be creating a problem.
Which is an approach we've taken before too. And so we went with, okay, here's what we're proposing to kind of break even. And we, anticipating that it could be nothing, it could be an incremental thing, but that's why there was no action piece to it, because we wanted to have that dialogue.
All right, do we have to have a public hearing for the schedule when it comes up?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Yeah, you'll need to have a public hearing. It's under Title 11. And just to piggyback on your statement, all fees adopted by the board have to be attributed to the service or product being provided, and it defrays the actual cost associated, and it can't go above that actual cost.
Mm-hmm.
How you quantify that actual cost, I'll leave to greater minds dealing with that go in and deal with finance and those other matters. But it can go farther than what the actual folks are that are going out to the place and looking. There's also staff that supports them overhead.
Yeah, you can have overhead, you can have things like that. It's just very difficult.
Oh, I understand.
It's very difficult to see a fee going from $85 to $225, saying that what happened now is that you need 3 more people or 3 more hours to do the same thing you were doing, the year before. It's not common logic to follow that. It just simply seems to be either we were making a mistake before, which we could have, and nobody's corrected it. And now you want to correct it, or we're simply using a formula.
Yeah, and my only point is, even if it's a lot lower than the actual cost, you're safe, because as long as you don't exceed that actual cost, you're okay.
Okay.
And I think my understanding is the philosophy behind it is these are kind of like an impact fee. It's that if you're not the people that are gaining the advantage of having these
benefits,
services provided, if they're not paying it, somebody else is.
Got it.
Okay. So we have, this dialogue has, obviously it's given us the feedback that we need, as far as what you need, the data that you need, and where you want to go with this. We can definitely go back. One of the things we didn't include is a lot of the things in here too are subsidized through, we've gone for competitive grants and we've subsidized some of that. So there's what I've heard from you is there's a piece of the picture that's missing. And so I need to do a better job of going back and
I think
framing it.
Yeah, and I think you need to frame it more on what it costs to do this, deliver this product, right? If you come into us and say, okay, look, it's costing us $85 or $150 to do this because it takes an hour and a half of, that is much more sellable than saying, okay, well, we're going to change it from this to this fee, because it's really hard to defend that wide range. Supervisor McLeod, I think we got the message. I think we're just going to bounce on the message.
Yeah, a couple of things. It's interesting to note, Diana, when you look at how much your revenues dropped from 15 to 16 and you were short-staffed, then you staffed up, you got out in the field and almost about doubled your revenue. I think it shows the value of having people out in the field. It's very interesting to see that. And in listening to the dialogue, if I understand correctly, were you one person short in 15, 16 and 2 people short in 16, 17? That's what the numbers seem to look like.
We're 3 people short in 15, like fully staffed, right?
Where? When?
No, 15, 16.
15, 16, right?
Your expenses are higher than they were last year.
Right.
That's weird.
So, Yes, and so that's where our grant, you know, that's why, I mean, I didn't give you a full
Grant
picture.
dollars.
So we had grants. So for example, we had a grant, we had some money. One of the things that we're doing is we're voluntarily following any, like for example, accreditation or any model code that actually improves this type of transparency. So we went back and we got some grant funding to be able to start that process, to look at the fees, to look at how we could improve. We got some funding for that. We got some funding through Prop 201. So we were able to do that and save the cost of that. But then there was expenses. We had expenses, like we had to purchase new equipment, new material, which we were, you know,
Right.
because again, it was things that hadn't been addressed for
Over
50,
time.
you know, cars, you know, that kind of thing. So it's a fine line, and I certainly get, you know, I understand all the points, and we can definitely go back and frame it in a way, because the same questions you have are the same questions the public is going to have, and it's important to us that they understand why we're proposing what we're proposing, and it's not an arbitrary. We would like to generate revenue, or we just want more money versus
Right.
there's a process.
Yeah, to me,
Yeah.
the way I'd like to see it set up is basically, what does that staff person's time cost? I know there's overhead and all of manner of stuff, but you're protecting the public health, and we are collecting money from the public to support your operation.
Right.
So I think just looking at
All
those
right.
direct costs are.
No, you good? You good, Martin?
Yeah.
You good,
Oh,
Lynn?
you must be hungry.
No, I just, if
I've
you
got
and
a
I,
dozen more
you know,
questions.
going on, you know, well, that's why I said, you know, if they're all good, I'm gonna let him finish up. If they're not good, then, well, I think you get the drift. You know,
Yes.
it's more than a drift, it's a
So,
direction,
yeah.
okay?
So we'll go back.
And, you know, we're not gonna make a decision today, it's not an action item. And we hope to see you soon with right, what do you call it, a progress report.
Well, yeah, we'll
Nothing
have
else.
a better phrase proposal.
Yeah, a proposal that shows exactly what your expenses are and why the need for that.
Yeah, it's gonna be difficult, Diana, because I know some of this, there are variables in there that you cannot account for. Like next year, you may get a grant or something, and then that's, you know, messes up the formula. But
Yeah,
I think that,
without grants.
that if you can point to a little more direct cost to the fee, you'll help us make that decision, okay?
Well, that was my point. If you're
Julie
tying
noted.
it directly to.
Do it
the
without
expense of
grants.
your
Do it
staff
without the
members.
grants?
Yes, do
Okay.
it
Well,
without your grants, because you
No,
don't
just
know
tie
from
it to the
time
staff
to.
member. The time it
Yeah.
takes and what they're getting
Yeah.
paid, that's a direct cost. That's what I'd like to see it tied to.
Yeah, well,
All the other stuff is peripheral stuff.
yeah, but the point that maybe is missed by Supervisor McLeod is that some of those grants cover staff time.
Yes,
See,
that's
that's
right.
what they're for. So,
We
you
can do
know,
a side-by-side comparison,
Yes.
just so you can get an
right,
idea.
just what it costs to do it, you know,
Okay.
with or without a grant, it'll cost the same.
Right,
And, you know,
that's
to take
true.
a side,
That's
okay?
true. But
Okay.
don't use grants.
Sounds
If
good,
you get a
thank
grant,
you.
then we're better off.
Okay.
If
Right,
we
that's why I'd
don't,
like to see it
then
tied.
we're covered, okay?
That's
Yes.
different than-
Thank you very much, everybody. Susan, you have anything else? All right, I hate to ask an attorney if he has anything else, but, you know, anything else, it's okay? All right, then. Thank you very much. It was an enlightening morning, going into afternoon. Thank you. And I'll now close the meeting. All right. I'm not gonna